Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 506 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and we have now heard that the Ukrainians are going to be bringing the war to the Russians. That is something a little new. We've seen it a little bit before, but they're bringing it like no other, according to what General Zaluzhny has said today. And so we're going to be moving right into that here at the beginning of the stream, where we saw that General Zaluzhny made the statement that Ukraine will be striking into Russia. According to the information we got, the commander-in-chief, General Zaluzhny, made this statement to the Washington Post, and this is the direct quote that was made. "This is our problem, and we have to decide how to kill this enemy. In a war, you can and should kill them on their own territory. If our partners are afraid to use their weapons, we will kill them with ours, but only as much as is necessary." After that statement was made, literally just 30 minutes later, the Russian air defenses over the city of Voronezh had been activated because Ukrainian aerial objects were detected on radar flying over the city. We can't tell if this was a successful interception. We did see the missile explode, but that doesn't always indicate a successful interception. We can see the security camera picking up the flight of the missile right there from right to left and exploding right there. Oh, buddy. And that's the loop of the video, but it is on. And the Ukrainians appear that they're no longer going to be playing softball. They're going to be playing a real sport, baseball. But it's absolutely impressive to see that they're going to be attacking into Russia like this, and they're not going to be attacking with Western weapons. They're going to be attacking with their very own homemade weapons, such as the Tu-141 Stritch, or the Hrom, or the Grim missiles. They're going to be attacking with missiles like that, meaning that the Russians will not be able to cry foul and try and escalate the war to include Western countries. It's going to be an entirely Ukrainian affair, just like it should be. And speaking of an entirely Ukrainian affair, one thing the Russians never like is other groups trying to meddle inside of their own country. Not just the Ukrainians, but other Russians themselves. Russia is kind of like a PvP pit, where people go in there and beat each other up and give each other bloody noses, and then whoever gets the most bloody noses to their name, they get to sit on top of the hill for a little bit. Well, that's what Putin has done for about the past 2 decades at this point, but it appears that that is still working to becoming a little bit of an end. It appears that he's not going to be the king of the hill for that much longer, because there are still words of rebellion and words of dissension going around in the Russian army, and there is an overall atmosphere of discontent at this point throughout all of Russia. The frontline soldiers in the Russian army, the generals of the Ministry of Defense, and still the Wagner unit. A video came out in between our war summary today and right now of a Wagner soldier saying something that was incredibly interesting. I'm going to take y'all to here because he's talking about some interesting things, and it appears that he's not that happy. So here's the video. It's rather short. Good day, everyone. I'm the field commander of PMC Wagner, call sign Berserk. We are located in brotherly Belarus near Ozapovichi on behalf of the Field Commanders Council. I'd like to tell everyone who lost their spirit that this is all just the beginning. Our march for justice showed a lot of interesting things. Without saying directly, I'll only mention that certain units of the MOD were allegedly stuck in traffic did arrive in the end to Rostov. In the first minutes, their commander, a very decent officer, found dialogue with our Ratibor. We arrived at very interesting conclusions which eliminate some of our previous arguments. Thus, you should know that there are like-minded people among your loyal footmen. Together we are strong, so I'm happy to please many of our supporters. Friends, it's all just the beginning. PMC Wagner and its path is far from over. We're ready for global events and turmoils that the country and we are waiting for. Thanks to all who supported us for being with us. Together, we're strong. Amen. That doesn't sound like happy talk. That doesn't sound like talk that is sanctioned by Shoigu and Putin. That sounds like talk of a rebellion continuing at some point in the near future, doesn't it, Matthew?
It sounds pretty close.
It sounds really close. And we can see that the Wagner unit is in Belarus. Of course, this marker didn't join them because I had to make sure to put it in a special spot. But now that we've covered it, now I'm going to put it up here with the rest of them. We've seen that the Wagner unit, for the large part, has ended up in Belarus. They're supposed to be back in Ukraine by August 5th, but of course, August 5th has not come yet. And we are starting to see that the Wagner unit apparently has an objective in between now and then and may continue on this objective even after August 5th, when they're supposed to begin fighting again inside of Ukraine. Apparently, the Wagner is in Belarus right now, training the Belarusian Army. And we got a picture today of Prigozhin in Belarus in some kind of a tent. I'm going to be honest with y'all, this is a sad picture, a very sad one, because this guy wears briefs. I don't know who wears briefs. I think everyone wears boxers at this point, but he's wearing briefs. And also another interesting thing is that he is in a tent like everyone else, and it's not even really that nice of a tent, but at least they do have a pole where you can charge up your phones and electronics and things like that. But beyond that, this is a picture confirming that Prigozhin is alive and he is in Belarus, helping out the Wagner in their new goal. And according to the Belarusian...
Man, he went from being like, a millionaire to looking homeless real quick.
I used to rule the world, bled. Now I live in tent in cat next to other soldiers, bled. But...
It's like, who took that picture and sent it out? It's like, jeez.
Dude, who in the world said, hey, with your briefs on, smile for the camera? It's like, who in the world said that? And he agreed to it? Yeah, I would have been like, no, don't take a picture right now. That was something else. But anyways, according to the Belarusian Ministry of Defense, they have made the statement today, according to Fitux News, that Wagner fighters are instructing Belarusian territorial defense forces, according to the Belarusian Ministry of Defense. And going off of that, we can get an idea as to why they're there. And also, before we even get into the ideas as to why they're there, let me go down here and make this clear before we even start. President Zelensky has made it clear today that there is no threat of an invasion from Belarus, from any group, whether it be the Russians, whether it be the Belarusians, or whether it be the Wagner. According to Zelensky, and his information comes from Ukrainian intelligence, and that is what it is, but there will be no threat of invasion from Belarus for the foreseeable future. And so that's just a thing that is out of the equation. So what in the world would the Belarusians want their army to be trained by the Wagner for? And why in the world would they even want that in the first place? The Wagner unit did terribly in Ukraine. 40,000 of them died, and they only gained one city for it. Well, the Wagner unit is the only hopes that the Belarusians have of getting an idea of what a modern war may look like for them. You have to remember that throughout all of Belarus's history, the 31 years that it's been in existence, there has never been a time in Belarus's history where they have actually been involved in a large-scale conventional war. It's never happened for them. And so it's something that they have no experience in whatsoever, and they have no idea how to really fight a modern conventional war. Sure, they probably work off a Soviet doctrine, but that is 40 years old at the minimum at this point. There is no way that that's going to stand up to the modern world and how modern warfare occurs. And so what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to get training from the Wagner unit so that way their military will at least have some kind of a theoretical conception of how a modern war will work and how they need to fight in the modern war. And that's interesting. And the other question is, why in the world would they want to know that? Because Belarus isn't in a war. They're probably never going to be in a war in reality. They only have an army of 77,000, and the closest thing they've ever gotten to nuclear weapons is Russian nuclear weapons being stationed in their country, but they don't have any of their own. So the chances of Belarus ever getting itself into a position where it does go to war is slim to none. But the reason why we think that they're trying to get their army trained up by the Wagner to have an idea of how to fight a modern war is because of Belarusian partisans in Ukraine. Many of y'all may know of Mustache Man. Mustache Man is the most famous of the Belarusian partisans that are fighting on the side of Ukraine. And many of y'all may also know about a group that is very similar to the Belarusian partisans, but they're Russian, such as the Freedom of Russia Legion, and of course the lesser known and very controversial, really, Russian Volunteer Corps. Those two groups are the same thing that the Belarusian partisans are, but that's what those are to Russia. To Belarus, those Belarusian partisans may be as much of a threat to them as the Russian Liberation Army is to Russia. And the fear is that they may end up eventually, if the Belarusians start crossing the Ukrainians the wrong way, there may be a couple of border incursions that these Belarusian partisans conduct that could end up being wildly successful. You have to remember, they do live in the modern world, and those Belarusian partisans have been fighting a modern war for 506 days now. And with that in mind, if the Belarusians go up against an army that is nearly 40 years in the future, or even partisans that are 40 years in the future in terms of their doctrine, they may end up being slaughtered at the hands of partisans. And so they're trying to get some training from the Wagner, most likely, so that way if there's ever a border raid, they won't look like a complete embarrassment, they'll only look like a partial embarrassment. And on top of that, we can also hear something else that may be leading this charge by Lukashenko to have the Belarusian army trained by the Wagner. The Ukrainian intelligence has noted that there are almost no Russian soldiers left inside of Belarus at this point. Almost all of them are gone and have been moved on to other places. Most likely the front line of Ukraine, considering that the Russians are running out of usable manpower and soldiers. They are having to scrape the barrel for the far corners of Russia and all the way into places like Belarus for usable manpower. And according to Ukrainian intelligence, which we also reported on our Twitter, you can find a link to that in the description below, the number of Russian military personnel in Belarus has greatly decreased. And at the moment, almost all Russian troops have been withdrawn from the territory of Belarus. There are none left. And so unlike at the beginning of the war, when the Belarusians could kind of lean on the Russians, and holy moly. But
Wow.
anyway, thank you so much, Mark, for the support. And moving back into this before I get distracted to make sure to wrap this whole thing into a nice little bow, the Russians are no longer in Belarus at this point, and they can't count on the Russians to carry the weight of what may have possibly happened at the beginning of the war. If for some reason the war was to enter Belarus, the Russians would have been the bulk of Belarus's protection. Now that's not the case. There's nobody there but the Belarusians themselves. And the Russians are still having a problem. While the Belarusians are getting a great benefit in their minds out of having the Wagner unit there and having them train their armed forces, Putin still, of course, sees the Wagner as a clear threat to his power inside of Russia. And honestly, it appears to be a pretty serious concern for Putin. We can even see a video was made today by a Wagner commander saying that their goals of attempting a coup are not over yet, at least as a unit. We don't know about Prigozhin, but as a unit, the fire has been stoked, and it is only going to smolder and then burn in the background until it explodes on Putin again. And Putin is trying to find a way to bring this entire ordeal under control. And they're desperately trying to find ways to make the Russian public think that the government is as powerful as it was before the coup. And one thing that we see that Putin is doing in that attempt is that he's trying to tell the Wagner unit that they may be better under a different commander than Prigozhin. And that commander is a guy called Andrei Trushev. We don't really know a lot about Andrei Trushev or who he is or what he does, but apparently he is a senior mercenary. We don't know if he's a senior mercenary in the Wagner group. We're assuming that he is.
He's in the Wagner group. Yes, he is.
And so it's fairly interesting here that Putin is trying to start an internal power struggle, possibly within the Wagner, to destabilize that group and weaken them so that way they're no longer a threat to his political power. Whether this is a successful attempt to try and change the power structure is a whole other can of worms. We will not really know that until a good while in the future. But nonetheless, it is something that Putin is attempting to do, and we will be waiting to see if that is successful. In the meantime, the Russians have to try and make a power play. They have to look powerful somewhere, somehow. And what is one of the normal ways, Matthew, that the Russian Federation lashes out whenever they try and look powerful?
I don't know. You tell me.
They attack foreign consulates and embassies and try and make it look like that's a power play on the entire Western world. And we saw something like that happen in the city of Smolensk today. The city of Smolensk was the area of a massive battle that occurred in between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, both in 1941 and I also believe in 1943, if I'm correct. And it also was the battlefield in between Napoleon and the Russian army during the Napoleonic Wars around the years of 1812 to 1813. However, in the modern day, Smolensk is really just known by those honors throughout its history, and it is a hero city, and that's a special designation that was given by the Soviet Union to cities that distinguished themselves in the Second World War and were the site of major battles. And this city is one of those, and holds a lot of prestige and significance for that reason in the minds of Russians to this day. And the Russians, of course, they understand that. That's a part of their culture, and this is why it's important to point these things out. there is a Polish consulate that has been inside of the city of Smolensk for decades at this point. Ever since Poland has existed outside of the Warsaw Pact, there has been a consulate of its own kind inside of the city of Smolensk. And there has been one there throughout the entirety of the war. All 506 days, this consulate has been there. And the Polish have been doing what they do. The Polish have been demanding for armed intervention from the Western world to happen in Ukraine to stop the Russians, and loads of support, billions of dollars of support, have ended up originating from the country of Poland directly into the war in Ukraine. Now, the Russians have known about that for the entire time. And now today, they are going to close down the Polish consulate inside of Smolensk because of quote-unquote hostile actions that Poland has taken against the Russian Federation. The good question is that's the reason why they're being closed down, and the Russians perceive that to be the case. Why in the world were they there for 506 days? They've been
They've been unfriendly the whole time.
Yeah, they've been unfriendly to Russia. In fact, outright hostile nearly the entire time. And now the Russians are going to kick the consulate out. And the reason is, it's not because the Polish are being hostile. It's not for that at all. It's the reason because the Russian government looks weak. And what better way to look stronger than to try and pull a power play on something that that is a symbol of the Polish government. And this consulate is one of those things. And by closing it down, now Russia can say, oh, look, we're so mighty and strong. We showed up the Western world on our own home ground, Bliat. We kicked them out of a consulate. It doesn't really do anything in reality. In fact, it just closes off another diplomatic channel that the Russians have that they can beg for mercy with a little bit later. So it doesn't really mean anything, and it once again is one of those desperate power moves by the Russian government to try and make them look like they have some kind of a large and omniscient power that they just don't have anymore, and they never will have it again. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little Polish consulate there, and we're now going to be moving on down into Ukraine itself, because we saw a very interesting picture today, which is the part of the Lyut Assault Brigade. And we can see a picture of this assault brigade right here. What's pretty cool about this is that they pose for the camera, and we can see that they have a decent amount of Kirpies. They also have some Unimogs. Hey, you gotta love a Unimog.
Hey, man, this picture's like OCD gone wild. I love how like organized it looks.
Man, honestly, it looks like one of those things I would set up with a kid with like toys. It looks like perfectly lined up. And unfortunately, I don't really know what kind of armor cars these are. So if anyone knows, let us know. And then there's a MTLB back here in the background with an NSV, a BTR-82, most likely captured by the Russians, a BTR-80, another 2 BTR-80s, an MTLB over there with a BMP-1 turret mounted onto the back, and some kind of a, I don't know if that's a BRM or a BMP-2. Can't really tell. But we can also see the part of the brigade out here in the field as well. And these are some really cool pictures showing off the soldiers that make up these brigades. And also another interesting thing here, Matthew, is that looks like a M16A2 maybe.
It does look like that, and that over there to the left looks like a AK, I think. I can't really see it that well. It's kind of dark.
An AK-74. It looks like an AK-74, but I can't really tell because they sprayed it over with camo, so I don't know if it's like an AK-74 in or something like that, but it is an AK-74. And also, this guy's got a whopper of a scope on this M16. Like, this guy is going to marksmanship competitions with this thing right here.
Man, he might be a sniper.
Man, he might be a marksman. And then moving on into the next picture, we can see what may be the commanders here standing alongside this part of their brigade. It appears to be a few companies. And then the last picture, we can see the view from the front of the unit, looking back over all of their armored cars, APCs, and so on, and also the units as well. A really cool picture and showing some parts of one of the assault brigades that the Ukrainians have been forming behind the lines, and they are most likely going to be committing this to the offensive that we're seeing in the south sometime in the future. But really cool pictures to see, and once again showing the combat power that a part of a brigade can wield against one part of the front line with that kind of equipment. We're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, and we're going to be moving on towards the location unknowns. And we have some fairly interesting ones today, starting off with our first location unknown, where we got to see the look inside of a Ukrainian bunker. We don't get to see this much anymore in the war. We used to get to see this a great deal, but nowadays this is a little bit more rare.
Показуємо хату, яку ми збудували за тиждень. За тиждень, Вань, десь?
You see him looking into the bunker. We can see it's a nice stairway with a little cover.
Десь так.
We see the walls are made of pallets.
Хижа наша. Andrucha.
wood decked
Thing,
floor.
I'm always impressed with like how these look. Like I know some people are gonna say, yeah, it's not that nice, but it's actually pretty nice for what it is.
Таку баньку
For something that was just made in an improvised way by soldiers in the field, this is
на
incredible.
гражданки построю собі. Потолок сильний. Здоров.
And we can see him showing off the little cots that they made, or more so the bunks.
Ну вот так от. Молоко.
See, they're showing off their little table right there with food on top of it, and that's the end of that clip. But a really cool one showing off the insides of this bunker, and they always make them to a really nice standard. They're always incredibly impressive, and you got to give a lot of credit to whoever the Ukrainian soldiers are that are building these things, because they give them a great deal of effort. And you could see the quality in the end product, especially considering that they're not really making this as a prefabricated item. It is something they have to hand build in the field piece by piece. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next little bit of news. And this one actually came directly from Oleksiy Reznikov himself, showing some Danish drones in use. And we're going to be muting that. Hopefully there's music. So we can see them moving the vehicles in place, getting the drones out, setting them up.
Oh, nice drone.
Oh yeah, man. You saw that carbon fiber and you knew it was
Yeah.
quality. We now see
Dang,
them.
that thing can carry a payload. Jeez.
It's processing the information and will now display it on the screen. So apparently, what they're doing is that they're using this to map out minefields and to find where the mines are. That is incredibly
That's clever.
cool. We now see them getting another one ready to go. Once again, carrying the magnetic device so that way they can find the mines. They're moving it over a lake, and it appears that they've now been able to find the mines, and they're going to be sending out a sapper team to demonstrate how this demining process works with the drones. Now that is cool.
Very cool. I wonder how much that thing cost, because it looked like it was fancy.
Man, I would assume tens of thousands of dollars at the minimum. But that was a really impressive thing to see. Apparently, the Danish have provided 6 of these drones to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. And what they do is, as you can see in the video, they carry that giant magnetic thing below them. It's just a magnetic stick, pretty much, with some high-tech parts. And what they do is that they fly it a few feet above the ground, and they just move the drone line after line, over and over a field, and map out the entire area. And it's able to pick up the magnetic signature of anti-tank mines, anti-personnel mines, and really any explosives there are that could be under the ground in that area, which makes it a whole lot easier. You no longer have to have the long and laborious process of having a demining vehicle go through with a flail and flick up everything in the field and try and find any mine by slapping a giant chain on it, and then the mine explodes. That is a long process, and while it's one of the most effective ones we've seen right now, this appears to be far more effective. This drone, in a matter of maybe an hour or two, is able to map out an entire field and find the exact spots where every single drone is, well, actually every single mine is, and then they can send crews directly to where those mines were found to dig them up and defuse them. It is a really cool thing, and I really think that's going to be helping the Ukrainians in their demining processes and helping them to clean up their country a lot faster than it would have been otherwise. Hopefully they can get more drones like that, so that way they can clear out more areas of Ukraine a lot quicker and make them safe for the public to be in. And so with that, we're now going to be looking at something fairly interesting. The Bradley is a light tank. Well, more so of a light tank as far as its armor, but it is an infantry fighting vehicle. We saw what happened today after a Bradley took a direct hit, most likely from an armor-piercing shell of a T-72. It drove off the field. We can see a massive hole right there, though, in its armor, and it appears that this is something fairly interesting that has not been brought up before. Tanks of this kind, well, IFVs of this kind, can survive direct hits from main battle tanks in the right area, and if they're using armor-piercing rounds, such as APFS-DS shell. And that's what most Russian tanks will be using at this point. It's a titanium dart, or a tungsten dart, or it could be a depleted uranium dart, actually, made out of depleted uranium. But any of those, they have a heavy mass, and also it's directed into an incredibly small area due to the very small size of this dart. idea behind using a round like that is that the kinetic energy will be able to push through anything, including composite armors that you find on modern main battle tanks. The problem, however, with trying to use these kinds of munitions and rounds against the things such as the Bradley is that the Bradley's armor is paper thin, and so there is really no spalling, there is no chance of serious damage being caused to the tank if it's hit in an area like this directly from the side. It just blows straight through the armor and out the other side, and nothing really happens to anybody. Sometimes, well, most of the time, the crew isn't even overpressured, because instead of it creating a small puncture in the armor, the kinetic force of the round hitting it just completely fractures the armor like we see right here. It just causes a massive hole, but rather than that, the vehicle is still operational. And I have to mention that this won't happen every single time, but the round had just hit around 2 feet more forward on the vehicle, it would have gone right through the infantry compartment, and that certainly would have caused some damage and maybe knocked out the turret crew, which has the commander and gunner inside of it. If it had hit far more forward than that, it would have hit the driver in the engine bay, and it would have completely disabled, if not destroyed, this Bradley. But in some instances like this, you can see that a shot can go straight through an IFV from a T-72, and it will survive. And some people are probably wondering, how in the world do we know that this was an APFSDS round and not, say, a Heat FS round or a high explosive round? A high explosive round would have taken out this Bradley. The explosive mass and also just the sheer weight of the shell would have hit the hull. It would have fractured it like that, but the high explosive would have blown inwards inside of the compartment and would have killed the crew. And so the tank would have been knocked out. If it was a Heat FS shell, the Heat FS would have hit the side of the tank, and then it would have shot a jet of pretty much burning hot steel and molten copper inside of the Bradley, and that would have also knocked it out and then led to it burning out later. So we can clearly tell, based off of that, the munition that was used against this Bradley was an APFSDS round. It had really no explosive inside of it whatsoever, and it just punched right in and then right out the other side. And so, really cool to see that one was able to survive, and hopefully no one was even injured. But we're now going to be moving on from that interesting clip and on into our last bit of location unknown news here, which is the Russian casualty report.
Oh my God, 10 in a day?
10 in a day!
No way. That's one of the biggest ones I've seen in a while.
That is one of the biggest ones we've seen in a while. That's probably one of the biggest numbers we've seen on the channel in a month. 10 special equipment vehicles were destroyed. Absolutely impressive. And we can see here in the comments, hey, Gilhuli put in a Bobcat.
Hey!
And
I always love it. It's like the Bobcat's like shaking and growling and stuff and that. Look at it shaking around.
Man,
it's just anxious to get on the battlefield. Although this isn't a representation of the Russian Bobcats. This is a fancy one. The Russians are getting those Bing Shaling Bobcats that come from Alibaba.
Man, they get that Bing Jilling kind of Bobcat.
What's up, Beijing type Bobcat?
What's up, Beijing? That I own Taiwan kind of Bobcat. You know, it's that kind of Bobcat that oppresses people in Hong Kong kind of Bobcat. But still, this one right here, gotta say, I like the little vibrating that it's doing. It looks like it's going. But anyways, moving on from that. 10 special equipment vehicles were destroyed. And not only that, the losses in every other category were quite good today as well. 550 Russian soldiers were knocked out over the past 24 hours. That is a 40 increase from yesterday, and great to see that 550 Russian soldiers have been knocked out. Not only that, but 9 armored personnel carriers have also been destroyed as well. Quite a nice number. And finally, rounding out the APC numbers from the 7,000s and bringing them into the 8,000s. Not only that, we saw that 24 supply trucks were also destroyed as well. That is nearly an entire convoy that would be needed to supply a BTG from empty that was destroyed today, along with 5 tanks, which is right within the war's average, and a whopping 24 artillery systems were destroyed by Ukrainian counter-battery fire over the past day. Not only that, but they were joined by 31 drones, 2 MLRSs, 2 cruise missiles were also shot down, and 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems were also destroyed as well. And overall, it has been an incredibly impressive day for the Ukrainian armed forces and inflicting losses onto the Russians. And for some reason, the Russians have still not really learned how to fight a war yet. I'm sure that tomorrow will be different. I'm sure they will lose all knowledge completely. They'll forget how to breathe, and then the Ukrainians will just wipe out the rest of them. But of course, absolutely incredible to see, and hopefully they're able to keep this stuff up, because the more they're able to keep this up, the more the Russian army collapses, and the quicker the war will end. And hopefully, it'll end sooner rather than later. Unlike some people on YouTube who want to cry for the Russians because they want the heckin' chunker upvotes, you know, and all that crap. I don't, because these soldiers here, regardless whether they wanted to be there or not, their existence inside of Ukraine and the continuation of this war due to their existence only ensures that more Ukrainian civilians and more Ukrainian lives will be lost. And so it is a great thing to see that these numbers continue to climb, and I hope that they only go higher by the next day. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little location unknown news right there, and we're now going to be moving on into the Frontline news itself. And there's a fairly interesting amount spread over a wide area, and starting all the way up here, we got a rare video from the 92nd Brigade where they've been using their drones to take out a couple of Russians. But before we get to that clip, there is something very interesting that I've seen in the live chat. Many of y'all have been asking very similar questions, and many of y'all have also had some very interesting questions that Matthew has turned into polls and has been asking y'all about, and a lot of y'all have voted on what y'all been thinking about this stuff. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
Man, you're getting creative with the transition between the news and the poll segment.
And you keep on pointing them out, so like you're defeating
I'm just impressed.
But
anyways, moving on to our first poll question here. It goes no respect. But his first poll question here says, Ukrainian General Zaluzhny says he is preparing to strike Russia's mainland with Ukrainian-made weaponry. And what are your thoughts? It looks like 77% said it's about time and good for Ukraine. 16% said, do it wisely, don't go too crazy. 4% said unsure, and 3% said bad idea. That's an unnecessary escalation. And on this one, I have to be with the 16%. I say do it wisely and don't go too crazy. While there are acceptable ways to attack Russia, it does carry risks with it. And of course, Ukraine is fighting for their survival. And I know people are going to be very ardent about the fact that they should have done this before. But, you know, every action carries consequences with it, and it could backfire. But I think Ukraine knows what they're doing, and they will be smart about this entire situation. Notably, though, they said they're going to use only Ukrainian-made weapons, so that way they don't piss off Western donors by using their equipment, because one of the conditions that the West gave when they gave some of that equipment was you can't use it to attack Russia. So Ukraine is also playing it smart in that respect as well, so I think it's going to be fine. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I think it's perfectly fine. What in the world can the Russians really do in response to that? The only thing they could do is try and nuke Ukraine, and they're already in a war with them, and we know they're not going to nuke them. And we also know that the Ukrainians have conducted attacks like this before, but they were a lot more ad hoc and more on the spot kind of attacks. They weren't something that the Ukrainians pledged as a continuous campaign. But this continuous campaign is probably not going to result in any real changes by the Russians. Now, it's just that instead of strategic assets being safe inside of Russian territory, they are now also going to be at risk of being destroyed inside of Russian territory itself. That is really the only thing that changes, and that is entirely within Ukraine's benefit to try and attack Russian assets inside of their Russian territory, with their own weaponry, because there's really nothing bad that can come out of that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next poll says, if Ukraine carries through on their threat to strike the Russian mainland, what will Russia's response be? 73% said Russia will respond by attacking civilians. 11% said that they'll respond by doing nothing. 10% said they'll respond with extreme action. And 7% said unsure. And unfortunately, I will have to agree with the 73%. I think Russia will take it out on the civilian population, which of course isn't anything new for Russia. But it's unfortunate to hear it might happen again and on a larger scale, perhaps. But then again, Ukraine has to do what it has to do to protect its land. And if it believes that attacking inside of Russia is going to sway the war in their favor massively, then I'm all for it. But hopefully they're taking precautions to shore up civilian defenses. But Enforcer, what say you?
Hopefully they are taking those precautions to shore up civilian defenses and air defenses. I do have a feeling, much like the majority of y'all, Matthew thinks, that the Russians will try and take this out against the civilian populace of Ukraine, but we're seeing that that's starting to become far less effective than it was at the beginning of the war. At the beginning of the war, they were able to rack up scores of dead when they attacked the civilian populace, sometimes 50 in a single attack, and that would have happened every few weeks. Nowadays, we see that they're very lucky to even just get one Ukrainian citizen or even wound just a handful of them. Their attacks aren't proving to be as effective as they once were, and that is to the amazing work of Ukrainian air defense, which has been perfecting their craft and also getting better weaponry and tools to work with over the course of this entire war. And so I'd have a feeling that we're not going to see the Russians be successful in those attacks, but they will still attempt them nonetheless, because that is the only thing the Russians know, is that if anyone rears their head against them, they attack the innocent people that stand in between them and their actual target, which is the Ukrainian government, but then they take out the Ukrainian people as well and try and commit a genocide. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our third poll says, does Ukraine's willingness to strike the Russian mainland indicate that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is going badly? It looks like 53% said no, Ukraine has simply been holding back. 27% said it sounds like a mixture of reasons. 12% said yes, it indicates desperation, and 7% said unsure. And I would definitely say that by the fact that Ukraine wants to strike the Russian mainland, that does not indicate desperation whatsoever. And in fact, it's well documented that the West has been convincing Ukraine not to do that because the West believes it'll unnecessarily escalate the war. Now that Ukraine is making their own weaponry and they have their own supply of stuff they can use to attack Russia, they can attack them without pissing off the West. So for that reason, that's why they're choosing to do it now, and they are not doing it out of desperation. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they're not doing it out of desperation. I think this is just the beginning of a new phase of the war. And it's a phase where the Ukrainians have their own weaponry they can attack in Russia. One thing everyone has to understand is that it's not an escalatory thing to attack Russia inside of its own territory, as long as the Ukrainians are using their own weapons. That's just a part of war. You can see that throughout all of war, especially in World War II during the Blitz. During the Blitz, the Germans were attacking Britain through their bomber force, and of course there was an air battle that occurred in Britain. But at the exact same time, the British decided that it would be smart to fight fire with fire and began bombing campaigns of major German cities in response to the Germans attacking major British cities. And so they would begin to bomb the cities in the Ruhr Valley, such as Dortmund, Essen, Dusseldorf, Cologne, and Bonn, and also Berlin as well, along with many others, such as Hamburg, Bremen, really any town that you can see here when I zoom out, they were trying to bomb it, even at the earlier part of the war. And that was not an escalatory act. It is a war, and you have the same risks of being bombed as you bomb the person you're attacking. That's just a part of the war. However, what's been escalatory this entire time about the Ukrainians attacking inside of Russia is that they're not just attacking like the British did with their Wellington and Lancaster bombers. They would be attacking with what at the time would have been equivalent to a B-17. The Americans were not in the war at that point, and so if the British were flying a B-17 over Germany and dropping some bombs on them with it, the Germans would likely assume that the U.S. was directly involved in the war, and then that's where the escalation occurs, because other countries are brought into the war, and the war now enters a much larger scale. That's where the escalation comes from. So it's not really an escalatory thing to attack Russia, it's just an escalatory thing to attack them with Western weaponry. And up until this point, it has been the case that really the only way the Ukrainians could attack in the Russian territory outside of the Stretch was to use Western weapons. And so that's what was escalatory about it. And now that we know that the Ukrainians have manufactured enough of their own weapons to be able to attack into Russia, there is nothing that really anyone can bat an eye about this with. Of course, the Russians will make a whole bout about it and cry and everything, because that's what they do. And the world isn't fair, and everyone always tries to make it unfair. But there's nothing that really can come out of this that's going to be negative. And it's not like the Western world can tell the Ukrainians they can't strike into Russia. It is their war, but we can't tell Ukraine what to do with Ukrainian weapons. We can only tell them what to do with our weapons that we're giving them to use. So I have a feeling that nothing really is going to be coming out of this, and that is also the reason why up until this point, there's always just been a blanket statement said by really anyone where they say if Ukraine attacks inside of Russia, it's escalatory. It's because of the Western weapons. Without that, it's not escalatory. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I also don't think it's showing desperation either. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And with that being said, of course, we are out of polls. Fresh out, actually. So we're moving on to our super chat questions. Yeah, we're fresh out. Not instead of stale out. You know, I don't even know why people say fresh out. I don't even know why I say that. But anyways, we're moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $100 donation from guess who? Mark, incompetent drone operator. And funnily enough, he is not incompetent at operating drones. He's very competent. I've seen videos of it, so he's being very humble by saying that. But Mark says, another enforcer fail. Briefs rock, just not on nutsack.
Oh man, Mark's call him out. But I would say enforcer fail. You know what, Matthew? You know what? We got to run a poll on that. What's better, boxers or briefs? Run the poll. Run that poll. We got to find out. I would have to be honest with you. I think boxers are better. I'm just not really a fan of briefs and how they feel, at least in my opinion. But you know, to each his own. That's why there are boxers and briefs out there, because some people do like briefs, some people like boxers. I'm just a boxer person, and so we'll be waiting to see what that poll results in. But I thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Mark, and of course helping this channel to keep on running. But I think you and me will have to agree to disagree there, because I'm just a big boxers fan. And for some reason that sounds like I'm talking about boxing. I'm a big Mike Tyson fan. But still, thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running and throwing in some funny, interesting stuff like that. We're going to just go on a little side note for a minute, because of course the war is a pretty bad, you know, it's a pretty tough thing to cover. Not a bad thing to cover, because it's a war that must be fought at this point. The Ukrainians must win it, but it is a tough one to cover. And it's always fun to have a little bit of a break here and there and to just break up the tension with a little bit of comic relief. And so thank you so much once again for a really interesting poll right there. And thank you so much once again for the support as well, and being a longtime member of the Leaf Spring Army and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, I realized on the poll I should have added the third option and said I can't respond, but I guess Emma has to choose a choice, even if you don't wear boxers or briefs. So pick one or the other. It's up to totally up to you. But anyways, with that being said, we're moving on to our next super chat, and it goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a very generous $40 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. And of course, what the hell? Of course, we have the animal noises. He says, "Bamuba. Woof, rough, Baba. My name is Matthew. Oh, whoa, I'm telling you. Baba, I like reading sheep noises. Baba, please add animal noises in your super chats. Baba, meow. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Baba, oink, wink. Chat type LSA, Baba, and grab a pizza too. Baba, moo."
And thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and supporting the pizza fund. We will grab pizza. I assure you of that. I think... What did we have tonight, Matty? We had Five Guys, actually. The Five Guys Fund
We went crazy tonight. Crazy.
The Five Guys Fund was credited, and we got some pretty good stuff. I got a cheeseburger. I think Matty got a hamburger, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And we got the fries. I got normal fries. Matthew got Cajun. And then we got shakes. I think both of us got banana, because banana is honestly the best flavor shake that comes out of Five Guys. But we will make sure to also put credit on the pizza fund here soon. But Five Guys tonight was really good. I was really enjoying Five Guys. But still, thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and thank you for the animal noises, because just like our burgers, our burgers were actually making those noises, the moo and stuff like that, before they became a burger, believe it or not. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will see if people add more animal noises in the super chats throughout the night. You may be trying to start a trend here, and I don't know. Maybe it'll be successful. And so with that, thank you so much for the pizza fund, Duncan, and always thank you so much for helping this channel to keep on going, and also enjoying this channel enough to be here with us pretty much every single night. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be going right back into the news.
And real quick, to address this poll, which got more attention on it than the polls about Ukraine, it says, what's better? 63% said boxers and 37% said briefs. So you can either choose between fighting with the boxers, or you can choose the legal junk with the briefs. So it looks like a lot of people prefer those boxers. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's good to know. It's good to... My fellow Americans, it is good to know that the boxers have won the competition. The briefs have been defeated. But really good to see. You know, I'm a boxer fan, but, you know, to each his own. 37% of y'all like the briefs. 62% of y'all like the boxers. And with that, very interesting results. That was a very interesting poll to run. And what's so weird about that? Y'all don't understand. Like, we find things incredibly weird sometimes. Is that Matthew is right. More people voted on that poll in a shorter amount of time than people voted on the other polls. And I don't know, maybe you'll enjoy sometimes just side note polls like that. They're weird though. I mean, they're not really relevant to anything in the news actually, but that was crazy. A lot of y'all voted on that thing in a very short amount of time. I'm kind of blown away with that. I don't know about you, Matthew.
I'm blown away. I'm telling you, I'm flabbergasted.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I'm blown away. I'm blown away. Oh man, I'm telling you. But with that, we are on, I believe, to the last one of this segment.
And yes, this is the last super chat of the segment before we're back to the news. And we have a $33 donation from Hal Rose. And of course, Hal Rose, you're always supporting the channel. And thank you very much for that support as always. And they said, Enforcer Matt, Prigozhin's march to Moscow for justice has succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. Shoigu and Gerasimov are wearing diapers these days. And pick a question from the chat.
And I agree with you. It's caused a lot more than one would think, and it's really showing that the Russian government is coming apart at the seams because people smelled blood. Well, the sharks smelled blood in the water, and now it's a frenzy to see who's going to be able to eat the most. And that's what it appears to be right now at this moment, so I would certainly agree with you. I don't know about Sergei Shoigu and Gerasimov wearing diapers. I have not seen picture or video evidence of that yet. I honestly wouldn't want to, and I'm just kidding with you. I get it's a figure of speech. They certainly are figure of speech-wise. But with that, we are going to be grabbing a live chat and then moving on back into the news. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to Brian Blackwell, who says, is the U.S. consulate still in Russia?
The U.S. consulate, from what I understand, has not been in Russia for a while. I believe we closed down our consulate and had our delegates return, well, our staff return from that consulate, for security reasons, I believe. That was what was explained. But let me check. Is the U.S. consulate in Moscow open? It is closed. At least it says that right here. But
it opens again on Monday.
It opens again on Monday. Let's go check that. Let's go double check that. So let's see here. Looks like unfortunately they don't really give their open or closed status right there. And let's see here, Monday. So actually they do get some business during the week.
Usually a little busy, it says. Like, who's showing up in mass like that? Surely not the Russians.
Man, apparently Russian spies from the FSB are in the consulate at 12 p.m. on Tuesday. It's usually as busy as it gets. It's crawling with Russians at that point. They're going, Suka, blah, where are the classified documents? But look at the building. I'm not going to lie. That's not that bad looking of a building, really.
It reminds me of the FSB building, where they take the people and interrogate them.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? And also they have some really... I think that may actually be the consulate. Now, that thing looks like the block, that's on, like, what is it? It's the gunner base in Montgomery. That kind of looks like that block, but with windows. Let's see here. But you know what? Let's take a moment for the reviews. What are the lowest reviews? And how do we sort them like that? Oh yeah, here we go. Lowest. I have used this embassy ever since I moved here, and the quality of service has nosedived in recent years. I have called them asking a very pointed, clear question that they should have known the answer to, and gotten the range of I have no idea responses to downright hostility. Embarrassed that this is my country's embassy. I'm embarrassed you're in Russia. You could have picked anywhere else to go in the world and you're there. I mean, come on, you already got low standards. Why in the world are you going to act like the embassy's got to have high standards? Come on. My father lost his green card to catch a flight back to the States. Except for some nice guards, there is no one available to see you. The guard handed me a card with a number which I called. They in turn gave me an email for the State Department and told me to write an email that they would get back in touch with me more quickly if they thought it was important. Very bureaucratic, very unhelpful. Well, it's the government. What are you expecting? Let's see. Canceled our passport appointment with no notice. At least half a dozen families were turned away by 9:30 Tuesday morning. Now it's closed permanently. Completely useless and dishonest staff. Well, what's dishonest about it? I mean, they didn't lie to you. They just didn't have your appointment. Let's see.
Man, people are kind of brave making these statements while they're abroad in Russia. Like, the U.S. Embassy is your only way to get things fixed to come back. You don't want to badmouth them too bad.
Yeah, you piss off the bureaucrats. Good luck, pal. You're not getting anything done at that point. When you really need it... When you're really needed, you absent. When you're really in a needed situation, you have closed hours. Well, hell, they got to rest too. I mean, it's the weekend. Let's see here. When you have to be informed of a very serious situation, you drink coffee. Please continue with this, gentlemen. Don't miss a whole country with a chance. Excellent, only. You've already got 2 meals. If you won't help, if you don't accept new friends. I think we have a Russian here.
Yeah, he's not American, I don't think.
I don't think so. I am from Ghana. Why are you at the consulate? I'm just saying. I'm not biased, to be honest. The system needs improvements. It's not like Russians have the best, but all I'm saying, do better. But if you're from Ghana, why in the world are you not going to the Ghanan consulate? Why are you at the U.S. consulate? I think you're complaining down the wrong path. Maybe I don't know that person's situation. Horrible. For any question, the answer is we are sorry. We are unable to answer or help in any way as we are short-staffed. Useless and frustrating. Well, maybe because it's in the middle of a war, and maybe they took some of the delegates. I don't know. But, who knows?
Wait a minute, somebody said just in business to get your money. What?
Oh,
like they're in the consulate, like, or in the embassy, like selling products? It's an embassy.
Oh my god. This is that kind of goofy crap that you hear from people who peddle weed in Ukraine. Just in business to get your money. Barely speaking Russian. Well, probably because they're Americans in an American consulate. I would assume they wouldn't be speaking a lot of Russian. It would be a lot of English. They're Americans after all. Give visas to future illegal immigrants, but they don't issue visas for Russia. Russia issues the visas for their own country. And deny them to real visitors. Very disappointing. That they don't even issue visas. What the hell are they talking about?
I will say, though, for a government facility, for it to have 4.1 stars, that's actually not that bad, because there's a lot worse ratings on other government places.
I mean,
I'm telling you, these reviews are kind of painful.
Let's see what the highest reviews were for a second. So someone wants to leave Russia. Apparently, so they
take me away.
Wait a minute. Take me away, boys, and free my soul. But anyways, moving on. Useless. I feel so bad that this consulate is not able to provide any service. Hopefully it'll change. Okay, 5 stars. We've been posted in Moscow for 2 years and have really enjoyed our time. Great customer service. Getting married soon. What does that have to do with the customer service? Okay. Thanks, Embassy of America. Friendly staff. Thumbs up. Very minded fortress. Design with this embassy. Okay. Friendly workers. Thanks. Thank you. Good. Great. I need help. Maybe. Beautiful. Beautiful. So largely good reviews, but yep. It appears that it's open, at least according to Google, to answer that question. But who really knows? It may be closed in person, because it seems that some of the reviews were mentioning they're closed and they're not really doing anything anymore. And that's a little bit concerning when you think about it, because there are possibly some American citizens that may have been trapped over there after the consulate was closed, that may have only been there. Well, hell, why in the world is an American going to be there for business anyways right now? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat and supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on from our location unknowns and on into the Northeastern Front. And so, moving on into day 506's frontline changes, this is what has happened in this area over the past 24 hours. Absolutely nothing. I know this is a shock to many of y'all, but the 92nd Brigade was able to do a little bit of work with their drones. And so check it out. We can see them dropping the F1 grenade. And waiting. And it looks like it was a success. And it appears that he's enjoying a nap. And so, pretty good work by the 92nd. They were able to make sure that one Russian soldier had a good nap. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on down towards the direction of Svatove, where we saw that a Russian IFV was destroyed in this area today by an airburst shell.
Oh! Croissant!
Oh, man.
Oh, explosion.
Man, right now, man, the Russians heard, "Hey, Jammy, can I have some of that croissant?" And then the IFV was just disintegrated. So there goes the IFV. We now see it smoldering down there. It appears that a jet from the shell just went right through the back of that BMP right there, and that's knocked it out for certain. And with that, that's the end of that clip, but very nice to see an accurate shot from that smart submunition. We're now going to be moving on into the area in between Lehman and Torske, where we saw a a U.S. supplied striker moving forward in Ukrainian hands. Oh, copyright. And we can see them moving on forward. And a little fun fact for y'all, can y'all believe that both today's and yesterday's war streams have both been age restricted? I can't either. It's fairly interesting because considering that we're showing the normal footage we've always been showing, it shows that there's apparently a group of people out there brigading. But I thought I would just share it.
We got age restricted today?
No, we didn't get age restricted today yet. I'm sure that'll happen after the stream. But we got age restricted yesterday and the day before that, both of them. But with that,
man, I'm telling you.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that little interesting video of those strikers. Of course, really nice to see. And we're now going to be moving on down into Bakhmut. And Bakhmut was unusually quiet today. To show you all the past 24 hours of the front line, we have seen that the Ukrainians, according to Deep State, have made a significant push in the south, taking an entire field outside the tree line. And in the north, we can see that they just updated the areas claimed by Ukraine to be now clearly claimed instead of the blue, which is freshly claimed. Beyond that, though, the Ukrainians have been making some decent advances in the south, but oddly enough, we didn't get any videos of that today. We only have one from Bakhmut, and that is showing the 80th Air Assault Brigade in action. And so, here's the clip.
The L-119 Howitzer unit of the 80th Airborne Brigade took this position just several days ago as the Ukrainian forces advanced in the Bakhmut direction. This artillery unit is here to support the infantry at the line of contact. It's never calm. The sounds of explosions are mixed with the whistling of shells and the quiet but deadly buzzing of Russian drones.
If you hear a whistling sound, it means a shell is falling nearby.
Грінч на прийомі. Тут пташка літала.
Давайте в укриття не світіться там.
That guy was wearing an American patch.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
80th Air Assault Brigade. We're working in the direction of Bakhmut, quite close to the front line, maybe like 5 kilometers. And it's been loud all the time, and constantly we hear the sound of the enemy's UAVs, just like now. So now we have to wait inside of this beautiful trench and wait till the sky is somehow clear again.
Beetle.
Suddenly the commander gives the order to fire. Soldiers rush to the gun. So once again, just before we were about to shoot the L-119, we got the information that above our head there was a drone, so we now have to mask the howitzer back and then run to the shelter. The moment it becomes relatively safe to step outside, we proceed to talk to Grinch, who joined this unit recently. A year ago, he was a mortar soldier. He broke his spine and both legs after hitting a tank mine.
Dang.
After the injury, he was not eligible to serve in a high-mobility assault brigade anymore. However, he came back anyway.
Man, what a trooper.
There was a
Really?
quick
Broke
flash.
spine.
At first, I didn't even fully comprehend what happened. My legs were twisted in the other direction. My spine was broken. Somehow I snapped out of it and saw the big picture. I was in shock. I tried to help my comrades, but unfortunately, I couldn't do anything.
They're now in the trench again, waiting out the bombardment and also drone.
At first, there was fear. But somehow I prepared myself for this, psychologically and morally. I prepared myself for what was going to happen. And that's it. That somehow helped.
Do you have any kids?
I don't. My wife is 6 months pregnant.
Oh, вітаю.
It's getting more active now. There are advances on the front line every day. Our boys rely on us for covering fire. Sometimes we shoot all day, sometimes we shoot day and night.
As the sounds of incoming explosions are getting closer, tension builds. Opening fire now is too risky. Suddenly we lose the Starlink connection, probably due to Russian signal jamming, leaving the unit cut off from the command center.
Well, they got Starlink back.
Apparently so.
As soon as the connection is restored, the unit rushes to fire. The L-119 is a British-made field gun used by airborne troops all over the world.
We now see them finally firing that L-119 we saw at the beginning of the video. A very nice British gun.
Our gun comes from Australia. It's very easy to maintain and it's quick to fire. With the D30 cannon, it takes up to 10 minutes to unfold and fire. Some mechanisms can jam. There are no such nuances on this gun. Moreover, it is versatile in its functionality. It can rotate 360 degrees. The blood of the infantry is the sweat of the artillery. So the most important thing is that our partners do not stop providing weapons and ammunition, because everything breaks down. Everything has its own lifespan. If our partners don't stop, we will kick our enemy out very quickly.
So we're leaving the position of 80th Air Assault Brigade. However, we need to leave fast because this area is quite accessible to the enemy's artillery as well.
And with that, that's the end of the video, but a little look into the life of an L-119 crew operating in the 80th Air Assault Brigade right outside of the city of Bakhmut. You got to give those guys a lot of respect, especially seeing a reporter just hanging out with them for a few hours and what they go through in just the span of maybe 2 to 3 hours. And that's what they have been going through every single day for months on end now in the city of Bakhmut. And I've got to give a lot of credit to them, and I also got to give a lot of credit to Australia for providing that L-119, which is a amazing designed artillery piece. It's a lighter one, a 105mm that was originally designed in the United Kingdom, but of course many countries around the world have ended up using it, and the Ukrainians appear to be as pleased with the usability and efficiency of the L-119 as every other country that has had it in its operation. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the area of Bakhmut, and of course, congratulate the brigades in the area around Klishchiivka for taking more ground today, and hopefully once again ensuring that the Russians will be pushed out of the southern flank and eventually all the way around to Pokrovsk behind Bakhmut. We're now going to be moving on out of the area of Bakhmut and down into Avdiivka, where we saw today a burning Russian tank. Apparently, the Ukrainians destroyed this tank and then immediately moved up to where they destroyed it, and we can see the remnants of this burning turret right here in the field. It looks a little overcooked. I would say it's burnt. And there was the hull of the tank right over there. So it appears we had a turret toss, but we didn't get to see it. That's the end of the clip, but still quite impressive to see. We're now going to be moving to the southern side of Avdiivka, where we can see that a Russian attack in this area was also repulsed by the 5th Special Purpose Unit of the Omega CSP. And we're going to be muting that. You can see them moving some drums of AGS ammo and setting up their AGS right here. And the nice thick reeds. If you're flying a drone, you might not be able to tell there was an AGS in that field due to how tall the weeds are. But we can now see the Russian trench that is about to become that Ukrainian unit's target. We now see them firing the AGS. And we're about to see the 40mm fall. And it appears that all of those landed in a pretty wide spread. One of them, well, 2 of them actually hit in the trench out of about the 7 that were fired.
Boof.
Man, now they're using that thing like a machine gun. It's a machine gun! And now we can see the shells landing this time over to the left. Some of them are starting to land closer to the trench, however. The AGS isn't the most accurate indirect artillery system. It is a grenade launcher. It's actually intended to be fired like a machine gun. So you can see that used otherwise, it has a pretty wide spread. But whenever one of those 40mm shells lands in a trench, it still has the exact same effect that a 40mm mortar would have. And we can now see a drone dropping bomblets onto the trench to also try and finish it off as well. We now see them dropping a bomblet on what appears to be a Russian machine gun or a Russian outpost. I couldn't tell. But we now see them dropping another bomblet onto this pathway. And it appears that one Russian soldier was disturbed. We now see the Ukrainians talking to each other, and some rock music playing in the background. And we now see them getting some more mortar rounds ready to go. See him dropping the shell, well, actually more so hanging the shell.
Putting it the right way down.
Putting it the right way down, very important. And we can now see them firing the mortar. It appears to be a 120mm heavier mortar.
Oh, wow, that was a nice back blast.
Oh, man, and the accuracy of that thing and the damage is pretty significant. It now appears that they have a 81mm mortar, maybe, in this area. Actually, I believe that's a 60mm. We can now see them firing it, though, and we're probably about to see what it's doing to that trench work. Of course, smaller puffs than the 120mm, but still quite effective. And we see that they're causing the Russians to scurry around down there as the fire's coming in. But very nice to see the Ukrainians calling in some fairly effective artillery onto that foxhole in the area south of Avdiivka, and hopefully that was able to repulse the Russians for a while. Moving on into the southern front, we have seen that the Ukrainians have continued the offensive in this area once again today. Over the past 24 hours, we have seen that the Ukrainians, and let me make sure I'm seeing this right, the Ukrainians have made an advance on the Deep State's map. And we can see over here that they show that the Ukrainians have been able to advance nearly a field's worth in the direction of Robotny. The issue with this map, however, is that the Ukrainians actually have control over Robotny from what we understand. That is information that came out from Live UA map and also information that we've been getting for several days at this point. And some video footage will show that it appears that they are now fighting Russians on the southern end of Robotny. But moving on from that and on to our video footage, starting behind the lines near Staromelnivka, we saw that a HIMARS was, hit a grad today. Oh, we gotta mute that. But you see the grad right here. It's a BM-21, your normal kind. And we now see the HIMARS hitting it and knocking it out. You see the grad sitting down there now dejected after it's been hit directly by a HIMARS shot. And so with that, I see in that clip right there, but great to see that the HIMARS was able to destroy a grad. Moving on from that and over into the direction of Wheelapole, we can also see some Russian units being hit hard in this direction. Oh, let me mute that. And also, wait a minute, hang on, did I have that title wrong? Yeah, Russian units were hit hard, and so here's the FPV drone hitting them hard. It's not really the drone that's slamming into him, it's more so the HE, the high explosive that's on the bottom of it. And we see here they're getting multiple effective hits, including on that giant toilet paper stash over there. A Russian just peeked his head out, and he's looking around trying to figure out what happened. Well, do you know, his friends were no longer around to find out what happened either. We see effective hits still occurring along the trenches that the Russians have. A good amount of them are concealed into these tree lines here that have been partially destroyed. But some of them, like these, are also out in the open. And just look at that effective fire. You know, Smokey the Bear would not be proud with this because it has the word fire in it, and it is an effective fire, but I think that he would still be proud that the Ukrainians are beating the hell out of the Russians. I don't think anyone could be unhappy about that. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the area of Polochi, where we saw that an entire Russian column was destroyed by a HIMARS. Y'all thought the grad was something, but the HIMARS destroying an entire convoy? Now that really is something. And we can hear some music playing. And we can see the HIMARS striking the column back here. And we can already see black smoke billowing from it, showing us that the fire has started to burn the vehicles out. Oubliez the team. I kill him. It's destroyed. Oh, a little fire started up there too on that vehicle. Very nice. And so with that, let's see in that clip right there. Absolutely great to see. And we're now going to be moving on from that area and into the direction of Robotny itself, where we saw that the Ukrainians were able to destroy another, more rare BMP-3. Check it out. Look, an old Soviet BMP-3. Look, an old Soviet ATGM.
Look, an old Soviet junk pile.
Look, an old Soviet slaughter. Oh, and there it goes. Boom goes the dynamite, and there goes the BMP. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. Very nice to see another pretty high-end BMP-3 was just destroyed. Meanwhile, we also saw a Russian tank being destroyed in this area as well. I'm sorry, advancing. I forgot to tell y'all that. As we can see, the Russians are advancing quite successfully. Man, whoever's in that tank is just chuffing. I mean, is that a hot box?
It's just slowly moving along like it's an exhaust pipe.
Man, calling that thing a hot box, because I think the crew is hotboxing in there.
We'll never be caught, bliat.
We will never be cold. And so what's happening here is that the tank has been knocked out, but nobody was able to stop the tank, if you understand what I mean. And so it just kept on rolling. And so, you know, it's a bit of a phantom tank. It's completely knocked out, completely unusable. There's no crew in there. Well, there used to be crew in there, but they're not around anymore. And the tank is now just rolling around the field until it eventually burns down and just is no longer able to move. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and on to our next one, where we saw a Ukrainian T-64 having some better luck and plowing over a minefield with a mine-clearing attachment to the front. There goes the T-64. You see that thing rolling on along through the fields. And it's about to hit a mine. Y'all wouldn't believe this if I told y'all, but the Russians claimed that was them destroying a Leopard 2A6 with a Ka-52 today. I forgot to mention that. That's why this clip has gotten a little bit of notoriety. But we can see that the mine-clearing device continues to just roll on in front of the tank, and as they were able to get one mine. We see the tank continuing to roll on forward. We see another tank down here supporting it as it gets out of the field and begins to move off. Apparently clearing a new path through the field for the Ukrainian forces to use. And that's the end of that clip, but a really interesting one. Really cool to see them using one of those mine-clearing devices on the front of the T-64. We're now going to be moving on into our next clip, where we also saw what an ATGM looks like flying at you. It's pretty interesting. You know, you don't really see this angle a lot. So, we're looking into the distance. There's a Russian ATGM crew out there, and there it is. That was the ATGM firing right there. And we can now see this little heat distortion kind of making its way across the field right there. Now, that is an ATGM. Observe. And
that thing's out of control.
Here it comes, and there it is right there.
Oh, dear.
And flying right under the camera and exploding.
Oh.
This was a remote camera station. There was no one around in this area. They just targeted it and hit it. But that is actually what an ATGM looks like when it's fired at you. You can visibly see it flying the entire time if you're paying attention to that specific area.
Whoa, it suddenly became non-remote. How did it get up and move like that?
I don't know. That's a good question, because I think it said on the caption, recorded from a recon camera. And I believe the recon cameras that they have set up are like the Russian ones that we see on the border, where they're little tripods and the camera just can look around. So, but that is pretty interesting, though. Let's look at that again. It looks like it did move.
I think it might be a recon camera with a man under it.
I think it may be. I think that I think we got the kind of recon camera wrong. But apparently they weren't injured because they were still operating the camera instead of, you know, running away or something. But very interesting video footage to have. We're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on into the area just south of Lobkove, where we saw near Shiroke a Storm Z unit lamenting the loss of a friend, and then immediately starting to trash talk the command. Oh my dear man. This is how we bury. If someone sees this video, this is how we bury the guys who did not come home. Like this, burned down. This is from a shortage of ammunition. The crew burned down completely in the storm. Here, take it off, bro. Here, the pipe on the fence. What's left of the fence. This is because of the effing commanders who could not do anything in time. They did not make any coordinates, no targets. The guys were sitting in the cars and waiting for the targets, and they were just burned down. They are, tell you that, I'm a deputy of the Komsomol. I have 5 accounts. 72nd Brigade, this is the most effing crap. I am the commander of the special platoon, and this is how we bury the guys who did not come home. Thank you, you said that earlier. And then the wives call, as Sveta calls and says, why didn't you save it? Why didn't you save it? I say, this is how it happens, brother. If someone sees this, let him effing hit the F. Wake up, effing commanders. Give us ammunition. Give us equipment. Why do you send young people here? Young people, F. People dying just like that here.
Pause this for a second.
You're noticing the vodka bottle being passed around like a bad habit while this video is playing?
What kind of alcohol is that? It's blue. It's like a bathroom cleaner.
Glycerin. It's glycerin.
Jeez, man, that was like straight up blue liquid. It wasn't even like vodka.
Man, they're passing that thing around like a bong.
They are. They're getting all sauced on it and yapping.
Here's your turn. Call them out. Here are the guys who went through Chechnya. Ukraine once, Ukraine twice. I went to Ukraine in August. This is how we live. This is how we carry with us. All that is, bled. There are 2 machine guns left for 22 people now. And ammunition in the pockets. And ammunition. Here's what all that is. And we were once forbidden to give ammunition. We went to get ammunition yesterday. Our car was stopped. I was driving the senior car. We were stopped halfway and returned back. They said, no one will give you anything. The order is from above, so think about how to fight further.
Я с тобой служил в МЧС 96-98. Входил в Чечню, выходил в 3 командировки.
And then it ends, but they continue the rant. And we can see that apparently they're not really that happy with their commanders anymore, and a lot of people are getting very happy and very free about voicing their anger against their upper staff and upper management in Russia, in the government and the military, as the war has kept on going. And I think it's largely because of the coup. It showed you can do that kind of thing and get away with it. So now the Russians are just losing that sense of control that many people thought they had for such a long time. And moving on down into Rostov, we can also see down here that there is some work being advertised to the local folks in this region by the Russians. Work in Siberia. The last time anyone went to Siberia, it was in gulags, and it kind of sucked a little. But apparently the Russians are paying folks from Ukraine. An average salary supposedly is $600 a month, and an initial payment of $2,400, and an additional $1,200 per family member after signing the contract. And that's in US dollars, by the way. That's not in rubles. You can see the amount in rubles here on the sheet. But I gotta ask this: who the hell would move to Siberia?
Hell if I know. I saw a video of some guy trying to start his car out there in Siberia, and he couldn't even start it because it's so cold. It's horrific.
Man, the only thing that Siberia is known for is the gulag. Literally, that's no joke. It's just gulags. And why in the hell would anyone move out there? It's uninhabitable. There's a reason why nobody lives out there. It is inhospitable to human life for the most part. There's very few people who can bear that kind of stuff. They're a special breed of folks. And I don't even know how in the world this is supposed to be successful. And we all know they're not going to pay them squat if you take up that contract. It's just going to be absolute hell on earth. And you can see that they're in every single mailbox. Like, these little leaflets back there are these pieces of paper in every single box.
That's crazy.
Some poor sucker is actually going to end up signing one of these contracts, never get paid, and sent to Siberia. He's going to be a voluntary member of the gulag. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news, very weird news, and we're now going to be moving on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 506th day of the war. And so without further ado, here is the speech.
I wish you health, fellow Ukrainians.
Oh no.
Today's key points. I held a very detailed meeting of the staff, focused primarily on the front line. The situation in all key areas of action, both defense against Russian assaults and our active steps forward. Plus everything that is important for this. Shells, weapons, equipment, the rational use of shells, supplies from partners, and our own Ukrainian production. Logistics. As always at the staff, there were reports from our commanders, the commander-in-chief, the commanders of operational directions, Zaluzhny, Syrsky, Tarnavsky, commanders from specific areas of the front line, and also Minister of Internal Affairs Klimenko, head of the Border Guard Service Danico. There was an important report by Chief of the Main Intelligence Directorate Budanov on the situation in Belarus. We are closely monitoring what is happening there in terms of security. As of today, there are no large-scale threats. Our full focus is on the front line. We must all understand very clearly as possible, that the Russian forces on our southern and eastern lands are investing everything they can to stop our warriors. And every 1,000 meters of advance, every success of each of our combat brigades deserves gratitude. Everyone who goes on the offensive, everyone who repels enemy attacks are doing a great job, and I am grateful to each of our warriors. This week we have not yet finished the planned international work. There will be important negotiations for Ukraine, and we are already preparing for the coming weeks. We will not reduce our international activity for a single day, in particular with regard to the peace formula, security guarantees for Ukraine on its way to NATO, and agreements with partners on weapons for Ukraine and sanctions against Russia. We are also preparing new NSDC decisions on sanctions. I continue meetings on the transformation of Ukraine. Today it concerned military education. All the experience of our warriors, all the competencies acquired by Ukrainians in the war, our new defense experience shared with our partners, all this must be integrated into the updated Ukrainian military education. It is clear that this industry at the state level deserves a significant upgrade. And it is very important that those who are actually defending our country and are already training our country's defenders be involved in the discussion of such an upgrade. And one more thing. Today, I took part in a conversation in America at a conference with the heads of the largest and most promising global companies and major philanthropists. Investments, jobs in Ukraine, support for our country and people. Ukrainians have now realized the enormous potential of our country. All of it is aimed at our defense. But when we end the war, Ukrainian potential must be invested in Ukrainian development. The world is waiting with great interest to see what this development will be like, what the victorious Ukraine will bring to the world. And this is a question for everyone in Ukraine who works for the state, who plans to work for the state. Everyone should ask themselves this question now and find answers. Ukraine has become a global force, and it should become a force for global development. I am confident that it will. Glory to all those who are fighting for Ukraine. I thank everyone who defends our country. Glory to Ukraine.
And
Slava.
And Slava Ukraini. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on the 506th day of the war. And that was a pretty good speech, actually, and a very interesting one, showing the insights and thoughts of President Zelensky at this point in the war. But another interesting thing has been shown in the thoughts and insights of all of our viewers on some of the top questions we've been seeing in the live chat tonight. And I would like to hear what these folks have been thinking, Matthew. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, and hopping right back into our polls, our very first one here, while I stutter my way through it, says Putin has proposed a new commander for the Wagner group, and will this fix the rebellion in Russia? 55% said no, Prigozhin still holds power, 22% said it might, but unlikely, 12% said yes, it will destabilize Wagner, and 11% said unsure. And to me, I really doubt that Prigozhin has really lost any power, and this really lame attempt by Putin to try to basically step in and say we're going to put somebody else in his place, who's apparently an underling of Prigozhin, is not going to work in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
Shoigu! What the hell do you mean I'm being replaced? But I would say no, it's not going to happen. That can't happen. Because how in the world is the underling supposed to usurp Prigozhin? And how in the world would Putin plan on that succeeding when this guy is probably as anti-Putin or more anti-Putin than Prigozhin is? That would be even worse for the Russians. So
I think Putin's trying to basically give that guy some ambition, so that way he feels emboldened to try to basically overthrow Prigozhin as controller of Wagner. But I don't think that's ever going to work.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like those. You know, Matthew, I was just thinking, it's kind of like those goofy people. You know who I'm talking about? Who come into our comment section acting like we have no idea who they are and saying that either you or me is better than the other and the other one sucks, to try and cause a little bit of infighting and beef possibly. It's kind of like that. I think that's what he's trying to do to the Wagner unit. And I think the Wagner unit is probably going to see through that pretty easily, because it's an attempt to try and divide the Wagner in between people who are loyal to Prigozhin and people who may be loyal to the new guy. If they are that stupid to not notice that, then maybe the Wagner needs to go. Who knows? But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one says, Russian personnel are leaving Belarus according to Ukrainian intelligence, while Wagner allegedly moves in. And what are your thoughts? 65% said Russia is redeploying to Ukraine. 14% said Russia is moving out of Wagner's way. 12% said unsure, and 10% said I doubt that. Wait and see. And I'm really not sure why Russia's personnel would be moving out of Belarus at this time. It seems like if the Wagner is actually heading to Belarus, which we really haven't seen any sign of that yet, that Russia would at least keep some troops there, but it looks like they're basically moving all of them out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think they're moving them all out because of manpower problems in Ukraine, and that's probably why we're seeing that there are none there, because they're trying to find any usable manpower wherever it may be, and one of the few places that there was usable manpower left was in Belarus, and so now they've sucked Belarus dry of any real Russian manpower, and I think that's why we're seeing less of them there. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says Zelensky assures allies that there is no threat of invasion from Belarus, and do you agree? 59% said I agree, there is no threat from Belarus. 18% said I disagree, it can't be ruled out. 15% said it depends, I need more details, and 8% said unsure. And on this one, I would say it's never wise to rule out any threat completely. While it looks very unlikely like Belarus or Wagner inside of Belarus will end up doing anything to Ukraine for right now, I think the threat is always going to be there, and that has to be weighed into the equation. But Enforcer, what say you?
And can you reread that poll prompt again? Wait a minute, let me ask that correctly, Matthew. What happened? Reread the line.
It says Zelensky assures allies that there is no threat of invasion from Belarus, and do you agree?
I would agree. I don't think that would make any sense for the Belarusians to get involved in the war. They're in a more fragile power situation than the Russians are, even at this point, and that would make no sense because that would just allow for the destabilization of Belarus to an unbelievable extent, and it probably wouldn't be successful either. And I'm sure the Belarusians understand that better than anyone else, because the Belarusians are the Belarusians, and they know who they are. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our last poll says the new F-16 coalition for Ukraine says it is still awaiting approval from the U.S. to train pilots. And what are your thoughts? 50% said the U.S. is being purposefully difficult. 37% said give it time, it will happen. 8% said unsure. And 5% said Ukraine will never receive F-16s. And of course, I believe the USA is being difficult on purpose at this point. They're withholding the approval to train pilots on the F-16, meaning they won't send the training manuals, they won't send the required simulators to get these pilots trained. And I think it's pretty obvious what the U.S. is doing at this point. They're really not wild about giving Ukraine F-16s, and they're doing pretty much everything they can to try to hold up the process. I think personally that's despicable. If they don't want to send F-16s, then make that known and stop the game playing. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say we need to be very clear on what we're doing with the F-16s, and stopping the coalition from being able to train F-16 pilots is not helping the F-16s to get there. It is only slowing it down, and the U.S. needs to come in and make that clear that we are going to approve the coalition training on those aircraft and have them there in a reasonable amount of time. We pledged those, I believe, in March or April of this year, and they're still not there, and we're not even approving training at this point anymore. It's ridiculous. And so, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, in my opinion, and we are on to the next one.
And once again, we are fresh out of polls, so we're moving back into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $20 donation from BC Skyman, as well as a $20 donation from Marion Deemer as well. And thank you both, BC and Marion, for that support. And sadly, no comments to address. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank both you, BC Scammon, and Marion Deemer, for y'all support to this channel. Y'all help us to keep this thing rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, this channel would not be possible. While it sounds like Matthew is sneezing over there, bless you. And so with that, thank you to both of y'all so much once again for the mass amount of support. Both of y'all are channel legends who have been an old guard in the Sleeve Spring Army for an incredibly long time. Y'all watched this channel go through everything. I mean, like, hell, y'all have seen all of the channel jokes come and go, new ones being born while old ones die. Y'all have seen the craziest things happen in the war in Ukraine, sometimes even live on this channel as they're happening. And I got to thank both of y'all for being around for so long, and of course, helping this channel out by supporting us and helping us to keep this thing running. Y'all help us to do this as a job. Y'all help us to do the one thing that I've always really wanted to do in my life, which is talk about things that I'm interested in. And I've always been interested in things like geopolitics and what's happening in Ukraine and other things like that. And I've got to thank both you and Marion, BC Skyman, so much for both of y'all's support, because y'all help to make this possible for me to keep doing. Y'all make it possible for Matthew to keep doing, and you make it possible for us to continue running these streams, helping Ukraine, doing this as a job, and keeping everything going behind the scenes. It means a lot to us that folks back us up 100% in what we do. And so thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that for both of y'all fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from M288. And thank you very much for that support as well. And they said, no question, but donation to your pizza and wings fund.
Hey, pizza wings! I'm not getting Zaxby's wings again. That's not happening. I don't know what it is, but Zaxby's wings, they're not bad. But at the same time, they don't even fill you up. Like, the sauce is okay. And then you sit there and you eat them. You can eat like 10 wings. And then you're starving to death in an hour. I don't know what it is with Zaxby's wings, but they have like no nutritional content whatsoever. It's weird. But beyond that, I've got to thank you so much for the wings fund, because one day we are going to have a succulent wing. It's going to be a good one. It's not going to be a Zaxby's one, but honestly, I haven't really found a place yet that I've been impressed with the wings. Like, wings are always like, at the places we go to, they always feel like a side thing. They're not really like the main thing that they do and it's really good. But one day we will find a good wings place up here in Birmingham. We do know of a nice pizza place, which is Capella's. Capella's pizza is just untoppable. It is the best in the city. The best, Jerry. The best. And so thank you so much for the support to the Wings and Pizza Fund. We will eventually get wings, and I know we'll have pizza. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping this to be possible. And of course, supporting the Pizza and Wings Fund. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling.
All right, and our next one goes to Rust and Rot, who puts in an $18 donation. And thank you very much, Rust and Rot, for the support and also for being a longtime channel viewer as well. And he says, was Prigozhin joking when he was wearing those ridiculous disguises, or does he actually dress like that in public?
I don't think he dresses like that in public. I think he was dressing like that for the gaff, or he was dressing like that to disguise himself, so that way from a distance, maybe intelligence agents may not be able to identify him as well or as easily. I think that's why I was wearing them. But I'm pretty sure, I have a feeling, that I'm fairly sure he doesn't wear those in public. Otherwise, someone would have mentioned that at some point, but nobody mentioned that until his place was raided and his selfies were seen. So I think he may have been doing that in private, possibly, at least from what we can tell, based off of logic and things like that. But with that, thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I know, because that would be my best guess at it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Barry Woodward, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Barry, for that very generous support. And he says, Enforcer Matt, if the world, sans NK and China, would united stand up against Russia, wouldn't this end so quickly? And Russia is weak, proven on the stream. And thanks, MJ, 1999.
1999. That was a good year. That was the year that everyone thought the world was going to collapse when 2000 came around, because the computers wouldn't be able to compute the year 2000, and so the world would blow up, and then it didn't.
Man, it was also 1 year before the Occult of Matt officially began.
That's true. That's true as well. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know anything about the Enforcer. Is there an Enforcer community? I don't even know, but that would have come around in 2002. Anyways, I would say if the world, including, I don't know if that means including or excluding North Korea and China. Do you know what that means, Matthew Sands?
Let's see. Sans. If the world sans North Korea. I guess I mean except North Korea and China?
Except North Korea and China? Well, possibly. It possibly could end the ordeal, but the problem is the Chinese are the other major power player in the world right now outside the United States. The United States is the #1 power player, but China is trying to play ball, and they're getting up to a close second. And the problem with that is that if you exclude China from that equation, the Russians do have someone to fall back on to get support, and the Chinese are a fairly powerful country, at least as far as Russia is concerned. And so with what you could possibly try and stop the war, but really everyone in the world right now is united in condemning the war in Ukraine and the Russians being there. So I think that if we were to say that the Chinese and North Koreans also got involved in condemning the Russians and wanting the war to end, I think at that point the war would most likely end, because there would just be no support from anywhere. There wouldn't even be people on the fence anymore to make it look like there's some breathing room. The entire world would be against the Russians, and the Russians would be at threat of having a global coalition come against them to crush them if they don't end the war. So I have a feeling that if you did include China, and they were also condemning the war heavily, that would probably bring an end to the whole ordeal fairly quickly, because there would just be no chance of support from anywhere at that point. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Barry Woodward, and thank you for helping this channel keep on running. That would be my best address of that, in my opinion. But of course, there is a chance for everything to happen in the world. It's just my opinion on the situation. And so with that, thank you so much. And also, he said not North Korea and China. With not involving North Korea and China not condemning the war or supporting it, I think the Russians would actually continue on at that point, because the Chinese do have a lot of support that they could give the Russians. And if they were openly supporting Russia, this war could go on for a lot longer. It then becomes a proxy war in between the United States and China, with the Chinese puppeteering the Russians and the United States backing up Ukraine. That's what it would turn into at that point. And then it would last for God knows how long, at least a decade. And so with that, I hope that does address it fairly well, now knowing what that means. And thank you so much once again for support, and a really interesting question as well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have the second largest super chat of the night from Alex Yurchenko, who puts in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Alex, for that support and helping to keep us running. And he says, we can listen to Zelensky in Ukrainian with the closed captions, and the speech video has two tracks. One is original Ukrainian, and the other is the dubbed English one. Click on the setting gear and select audio track. And thanks for what you've been doing and been watching almost since the beginning.
And thank you so much for the support, Alex Yurchenko. And thank you for watching this channel practically since the beginning. A lot of people seem to have watched since the beginning, and every once in a while, y'all support the channel. I got to thank y'all so much for being old guards of this channel and also helping us to keep this thing going. This is through support from folks like y'all that we are able to keep this thing rolling. And so thank you so much, Alex. And thank you for sharing that info with me. I'm going to check that real quick. Maybe I'm not understanding how that works. I'm not the most technologically literate person in the world, mind you. So let me see if we can find a second track here. All right. Second track. What? Oh my God, he's right.
There's a second track the whole time?
There has been a second track the entire time. The mixtape has two tracks, and we've been listening to the wrong one for several weeks now.
Man, that's a miracle that we knew about that. Thank you very much for telling us, by the way, because that other voice is unbearable.
You may have put in $50 into supporting us and helping us keep this thing going, but the information you just gave us is priceless. It truly is priceless, because I absolutely hated the translator. Whatever that thing was, whether it was AI or something, you know, I don't mean, if it's a real guy, I don't mean to rat on his translating abilities. I mean, like, he is translating it fairly well. But the Zelensky's original voice is a lot better. But nonetheless, thank you so much for the support and sharing that amazing information with us. That has got to be one of the best bits of information that I have been shared the entire time I've run this stream. That takes the cake from everything at this point, because this is saving the speeches. And so thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Alex, and also the priceless information you just gave us, because we can actually change the tracks. I did not even know about that until right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I'm honestly stoked for that. That was some information that is something. And so thank you so much once again. And I hope I addressed that fairly well. Well, hell, I think you addressed a fix to a problem that we've had better than I can address that answer and that information. But thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, Alex, for helping this channel to keep on rolling and helping us to make these streams a little bit better. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Carolyn, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for that support as well. And they said U.S. F-16 training beginning in Romania in August, 7/13/2023, Euronews article.
Interesting. I thank you for the support on that, Carolyn, and also sharing that little tidbit of info with us, because I did hear at some point that the U.S. was going to be training on the F-16, but apparently they're not giving that approval to other coalition members in this F-16 alliance for them to also train on the F-16s, which is still a bit of an issue because it's not allowing for the same volume of pilots to be trained, well, a larger volume of pilots to be trained over the same amount of time. And that can prove an issue because if the Ukrainians are only able to train, well, the U.S. is only able to train 7 Ukrainian pilots every 6 months, there's only going to be 7 new F-16s arriving in Ukraine every 6 months. Regardless whether we dedicate 20 or 30 to them, they have to have pilots to fly them. And if we have the coalition members training them, we could get that number up to 20. And we could have all of those F-16s arrive in Ukraine in several months' time. And so I have a feeling that it would probably be better for us to approve that that coalition training from other countries. But it is good to hear, nonetheless, that the U.S. is training F-16 pilots nonetheless. Bless me.
Damn.
Damn, son, where'd you find that? In my nostril. It's blowing out. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and sharing that with us. And with that, we are on to the next one. I hope I addressed that fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a $15 super chat from Siri, who says, thank you both for the wonderful work you do, and thank you as well. And they said that this underwear poll made me wonder, what percentage of channel viewers are female? And much love from Oslo. Yeah, it's only 8% these days. It's only 8%.
You also forgot to include, Matthew, that the little woman in the dress emoji in the meme after how many are women? Dress emoji. But to answer that question, it used to be 10. Now it's around 8.8%, I believe. So we're actually growing a steadily larger volume of male viewers by about 1.2%, I believe, 1.4%. And that, actually, that change over time, over 6 months, is a fairly decent-sized change. But most of our viewers are actually male. A very small amount of them are female, only around 8.8% of them. And I believe that number is continuing to decline. I don't know if it's because of our face reveals. Were they that bad? I have a feeling they probably were. That's still not worse than some other face reveals out there, but, you know, it's on up there. But still, I hope that does answer that fairly well, Siri, and thank you so much once again for the support and enjoying this channel and sharing with us some kind words. It means a lot to us. Folks do enjoy this channel and help this thing to keep on rolling as well. And also a fairly good and interesting question about the analytics. You would be really surprised about our analytics because based off of what our analytics tell us, our viewership largely consists of men who are in between the ages of 40 to 60. So most viewers of this channel are 20 years older than I am, which is fairly interesting and really neat, actually. But anyways, apparently, Matthew, I'm seeing a large push in the live chat for a poll on this to see how many people will answer the poll and how many men and women are here tonight.
Well, we know for a fact it's 8%.
But how many are watching tonight, though?
Oh, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, let's see.
Well, let's find out. Look, Jack. Anyways, but anyways, let's see here. We're waiting for the poll to go up, and we're seeing a lot of comments. Someone said, "Hello, ladies." But let's see here. And so we now we have a poll. So let's see what the answers are. Holy moly! Actually, we got a lot of female answers there at the start, and now the males are crushing it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you for the support, Siri, and I hope you enjoy this poll. It'll actually show, at least according to the pollable audience that vote, how many males versus females are here. And so with that, thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling, and I hope we were able to address that better than you even anticipated. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Mace, LSA, who puts in a $15 donation, and thank you very much, Mace, for that support. And he said, get yourself a milkshake from Five Guys. And we actually did, believe it or not. He said, trust me, the milkshakes are as good as the burgers. Haters gonna hate, ain'ters gonna ain't. And hate us because they ain't us. And Slav Ukraine.
When they go low, we go lower.
No, you gotta do it right. When they go low, I go lower.
And wait a minute, hang on, man. Hold up. 1 second, Matthew. Let's start interrupting each other here real quick to get the joke set up. Well, Matthew, I was talking to you for a second there, real quick, and he's not interrupting me right now. We're gonna see if he starts interrupting me. Oh, well, go ahead then.
Damn, blow my ears out. Jeez.
Oh, man. And now people, my ears, they're bleeding. But anyways, with that, Thank you so much for the support, Mace. And we got banana milkshakes today. They are good. They are really good. I mean, you can't even really describe what like Five Guys milkshakes are like. They are really rich tasting, but they are great. They are as good as the burgers. I can't lie. And also, the haters will hate. At this point, it's hilarious. You know, because and I know you know, Mace, because you've been updating us a little bit on it. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's always so funny because this person in particular that you're talking about, and I'll only cover this for a quick second, actually said crap about us. So then Matthew put a comment on their video, and then he wants to act like he's the one under attack. It's like you can't shoot at someone and then get shot back and go, "Oh my God, I'm the victim." Then at that point, you may as well be a Russian. But anyways, the haters will hate. We're still over here. We on that grind all the time. Well, you know, I'll hold back on that joke. We don't want to go below the belt yet. Well, actually, the emails went. It's the emails, though.
Yeah, I kind of let loose on the emails. Yeah, I'm trying a new strategy now. Being merciful and kind was taken as weakness, so I'll try the bull in a china shop routine, see if that works.
Well, and you know, and I'm still wondering, you know, because apparently this guy's such a rock'em sock'em that he couldn't tell us to our face, but he said he was going to come back to Alabama after he gets done hanging out in Ukraine. In, you know, just doing whatever. And so I would love for him to come down, come by, drop by. I don't know what you're going to do, but we'll find that out once you get here. Because I know you know where we live. But with that,
man, so many people said they're going to drop by, but nobody ever comes by to visit us. I feel lonely out here.
Yeah,
man.
I feel real lonely. I would love for someone who said they were going to drop by to drop by. Because honestly, I'm getting tired and impatient of waiting. I mean, like, people tell us they're going to drop by at certain times and we just sit there for like 30 minutes and then they never show up. You know, it's like, you got to show up eventually. You can't sit there and talk all this loud talk and then, you know, such a alpha male Chad, and the only solace they get is going and complaining to other people about it. We don't do that. We deal with this person head on. It's no one else's problem but ours, but they're such a real man that they got to go and complain to everyone and whine like a little baby because there's really nothing to what they're doing rather than just complaining and running their mouth. But please come down to Alabama. We would love for you to come by. And so with that, thank you for the support, Mace, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to the Game Schizo, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for that support. And he said, is it possible that this attack in Russia is a diversion to lure Russia into weakening the southern front line and slow Ukraine?
And reread that one again?
It's actually right in the live chat.
Right in the live chat? Where?
Yes.
Let's see here. Oh, here we go. The Game Schizo. They're in the wall! But anyways, is it possible that this attack in Russia is a diversion to lure Russia into weakening the southern front? If you're talking about the RLA push that happened at Shebekino, possibly. Because that was certainly an attempt to draw more Russian forces out of Ukraine and put them onto the border. And then it ended up the Wagner and the Chechen Kadyrovites ended up going there. So it was slightly successful. But as in the missile attacks that it appears the Ukrainians are going to be doing, that probably isn't going to be drawing a lot of forces off the border. Maybe some air defense units. But really, the in that one sense, in that smaller sense, in that smaller scale, it would actually end up being detrimental for Ukraine to have Russia pull out their surface-to-air missile systems and then move them into Russia for their defense, because the chances of them being destroyed near the Ukrainian front lines is far greater than the surface-to-air missile system's chances of being destroyed will be inside of Russia. It'll be incredibly lower. So in that one small sense, it'll actually be a bit of a negative for Ukraine, but the positives outweigh that negative. The Ukrainians will be able to attack ammunition depots that they've never attacked before. They'll be able to attack armories. They'll be able to attack barracks and camps. They'll be able to do things that they have not done before, including attacking strategic assets such as airfields with aircraft and helicopters on them, instead of the kind of smaller piecemeal stuff they've been able to attack at this point inside of Ukraine. So it probably won't draw Russian forces out, but it will destroy a lot of Russian equipment before it can make it into Ukraine, most likely. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, the Game Schizo, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I don't know if I should tell you to stay Schizo, but you stay you. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick to go over this poll, it says, who are you? Looks like 82% said male and 18% said female. So I'm not exactly sure how the numbers are adding up here exactly, because I thought 8% was the max, but apparently things have changed. But Enforcer, what say you?
Apparently things have changed. Well, at least the pollable audience, because there may be a decent amount of people who may not be able to vote on this poll. They may be watching it on their TV or something where the poll isn't really accessible. 17% of y'all actually are female, so almost 1 in every 5 of our viewers are female, and 4 in every 5 are male. So very interesting results right there. That's actually way higher than YouTube tells us. In fact, that interests me enough, Matthew. I'm going to have to go to one of our streams that we ran 2 days ago and see what the numbers were on that, because I'm fairly interested now at this point. What would they be? So analytics, let's go to the audience, and let's scroll down here. Okay, so this was the stream Ukraine takes Klishkivka. I think this was day 504. Only 5.9% of our viewers were female on that stream, and 94% of them were male.
Wow, that's wait a minute, repeat that again.
5.9% of them were female, 94% were male.
I don't know why, but I don't know if I'm like having a stroke, but that's not like computing in my head for some reason. It's like going in one ear and out the other.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll just drop that then. Okay, Matthew's about to have a stroke. But let's see here. What did yesterday's top Russian generals were rebelling? What was the audience breakdown on that video, if we've gotten it? So 6.7% of the viewers on that video were female. 93.2% of them were male. So an incredibly interesting breakdown. And interestingly enough, Matthew, the age demographics on that one were incredibly interesting, because the percentage only increased as the ages got older. 25%, 1 in every 4 viewers on that video that you made the other day, were over 65 years old. 1 in every 4 of them.
Yes, because these young whippersnappers don't care about international politics.
And only 2.4% of our viewers on that video were in between the ages of 18 and 24.
And what was that number again?
2.4%.
Man, I'm telling you.
Yeah, so only 2.5 out of every 100 viewers on that video were in our same age bracket as us. That is really interesting. And I gotta be honest, when you look at those demographics, it always creates this silly thing in the world where, a lot of people always say they would love to have younger people involved in things, but younger people just don't choose to be involved in things. And, and then they complain that only older people are involved in things. It's like, it's just your choice that's holding that back. It's like there's
I bet you
else.
If we talked about that blue liquid that guy had out in the field, I bet the young people would show up quick.
Man, that Hennessy. But anyways, fairly interesting results. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for filling out that poll so that we could get an interesting results on the pollable audience. And also, Governor Ivy, good question. YouTube doesn't actually give us any stats on that. Every single time that pops up, it just says 0% for us. So, it's something that I can't even really cover because it just says 0%. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Mark Gagne for putting in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mark, for that support. And sadly, no comment to address. But also, I still do remember how to pronounce your last name, which is very rare for me because typically I butcher last names. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much, Mark Gagne, for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. He threw in a super sticker that said, "You are amazing." And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for saying we're amazing. It means a lot to us, and it flatters us every time we get compliments. And it's weird. It's always weird because over time you get used to compliments and you just thank people for them. But Matthew can tell you my natural inclination is to shy away from compliments. I just don't really do compliments well. I don't really know how to receive them and thank people for them really. But this channel has has taught me or learned me how to do them. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is a $20 super chat from Butchie777, and thank you very much for that support as well. And they said, if the LSA had its own anthem, how would you it sound, and how would you like it write it? And really enjoy your channel and keep up the great work, and Slava Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the kind words. And that's a good question, Butchie. I've been trying to find an idea for the flag. We haven't even conquered the flag idea yet. Anthem will probably be even tougher because it would be very hard to have people compose the songs and then come up with a good one. One idea that I had was to just take old anthems that are no longer in use from defunct countries. One of them was actually, one of the ideas was to take the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic's anthem and to just put our own lyrics to it, kind of as a laugh to the Russians once controlling Ukraine, and then putting our own lyrics to it that have their whole own meaning. But that idea, I was like, that wouldn't really be original enough. Because one thing I don't like doing that a lot of people do nowadays is that they always come up with like the same cliche stuff, or they just reuse old stuff and they make it new. Like Fast and Furious number 20, or, anything else really. Like every time a conspiracy theory comes around these days, no one's even creative enough to come up with a cool name for it. Everything is just blank gate. Like it could be Cargate, Watergate. Watergate was the original one, and then
it was just the name of the building, wasn't it? It wasn't like anything revolutionary.
No, it was the name of the building. The name of the building was just Watergate, and then for some reason everyone went, Donut Gate. It's like, what the hell does that mean? Like, come up with something. Interesting sounding. I can't stand how everyone just puts the gate thing on everything now. Like, I would feel like conspiracy theorists. First off, a lot of conspiracy theories are honestly bogus. If you just know how things work, you're like, oh, come on. But, I feel like people would take conspiracy theories a little bit more seriously, which may be a detriment to society, if they actually came up with more creative names than Blank Gate. Let's think of something random, Matthew. Prius Gate. It would be something like that. And then they...
Now, that's a conspiracy theory right there that I wouldn't even begin to get into because, Prius Gate, there's a lot of stuff there to cover.
Man, there's a lot. The liberal media, they want you to think that the Prius is good. But anyways, moving on from that. Where in the hell was I even taking? Oh yeah, the anthem. There we go. The anthem. That's where we're taking it. Then being original. We want this thing to be original. We don't just want this thing to be unoriginal and uninspired. We want everything the Lee Spring Army does to be original and unique to itself. And that's why when a lot of people give Ukraine flag concepts for the flag, we shoot them down, because we don't want the LSA to just look like any generic thing. We want it to be special. We really do. And I would rather put in a lot of time and effort and delay the end result by a long time than coming up with something that kind of looks like it's a copy paste. And so if I had to do an anthem, I would tell you this. It wouldn't be anything modern sounding. It would be what I would call an early 20th century or a 19th century style anthem, which is where most anthems came to be. And it would be a pretty good sounding one with fairly... It would be a choral. The lyrics would be choral. It wouldn't be like a thing that you could just sing on your own, like every single singer who butchers the Star Spangled Banner, it seems. It would be something that would have to be sung by a choir and accompanied by a band. But with that, I hope that kind of addresses that in a super vague way, because beyond that, I really don't know what it would sound like at this point. And a lot of people are saying bagpipes. And I actually do play the bagpipes. It's just that they're incredibly loud, and I don't want to bother our neighbors, because I don't know how they would like the bagpipes or how they would like that and hearing that every day. But, maybe one day we'll have an anthem. I don't know when that will be, but it will be sometime around. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Butchie. I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $13 super chat from Margaret Hemsley. And thank you very much, Margaret, as always, for that support. And she says, champions of the LSA and Ukraine faithfuls, please put this toward the healthy snack fund.
And it sounds like Matthew was not being healthy there. At the end of the day, he said, healthy snack fund. I was like, oh no, he's dying over there. But still, we will have some healthy snacks. Matthew, what do you think would be a good healthy snack?
Yeah. I have no idea. I don't know.
What I was thinking is those strawberry little giblet things covered in yogurt.
I don't know if you can call that healthy or not, but I guess maybe it could qualify.
Well, it's got fruit in it.
Is it fruit? Is it?
Yeah, it is. It's like a strawberry that's been turned into a block, and then it has a little bit of yogurt on it. I mean, like, that's a fairly healthy snack as far as snacks kind of go.
I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, like, that would be the one I would shoot for. Or, I love apples. I actually really like apples. Apples are great. And also, persimmons are really good, too. But you got to get the right kind of persimmons, because some persimmons just aren't right. But other ones are just amazing. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And while I sit over here going through a coughing fit with my mic muted, let's see if I can get through this next one. The next one is from Sully Canuck, who puts in a $12 super chat. And thank you very much for that support. And Sully says, we in London say, long live the Leaf Spring Army.
And all y'all do in London? In London, Ontario? Oh, dang. And so, thank you so much for saying long live the LSA up there in London. And I hope that all Londons say long live the LSA by the time we're done. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you make it possible for the words long live the LSA to continue to be a thing in this world. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Blue Flam 777, longtime channel viewer as well, and thank you very much for that support. He says he's too sexy for his shirt. He's too sexy for undies. They melt. Uh-oh. Let's see.
Censored.
I don't know about this last part. I don't know about that. He says, question to the chat.
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Of course, the comment would be censored. That is in tradition. But we will make sure to get a live chat. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, what do we got?
And our live chat question goes to Born in Ukraine, who says, did anything ever come out of Russians flying to the U.S. a few weeks ago to exchange the staff?
Nothing really came out of it. It just seemed to be a routine exchange of staff. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Carson Larimore, who puts in a 10. And thank you for that support as well. They said Putler is holding Prigozhin in a tent and tricking him out. Thus the pic with the briefs on and smile for the camera, my little piggy.
Why'd you say piggy?
Oh
so weird. You said, my little piggy. I was like, oh,
man, I was trying to make sure I wasn't about to say something nasty. I was just making sure.
Oh, no. That is a terrible comment, but that is hilarious. And I got to thank you for the support and actually getting me to laugh. That was a pretty damn good one right there. I don't think anyone can refute that. Man, good lord, man. Putin is the pimp of Russia. He's a pimp named Slickback. But still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel keep on running. It's really a pretty good one. I gotta admit, you can't really top stuff like that. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from New Jersey, UFOs, secret space with some chemtrail, who says, this is not a Ukraine-related question, but if you did see, Congress wants a hearing on UFOs by the end of the month, and let's see, both R&D.
And I thank you for the support. I don't really think this channel covers much about that. I think that's really out of my realm of expertise. And so I'm just going to declare ignorance on that. And I thank you so much for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Louis11, who puts in a 10 and says, low and slow roast, lols.
Man, have you ever enjoyed yourself a low and slow roast out there on an open fire? Well, I can tell you something, my friends. Our boy who's going to be trying to visit Alabama is going to be having a nice low and slow roast himself. And I'm going to tell you, they will have never tasted sweeter or better. And so that, thank you for the support and helping this channel keep on running. But I got to thank you for the low and slow roast right there. I got to tell you, that's the best way to cook up a brisket because the briskets always turn out juicy. Juicy. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mr. Clancy, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support. He says, what is the story about Tony? I missed if you told it before.
Tony! Okay, so this is a great story. Sadly, I don't have the video clip to back this one up, but you'll have to take my word on the trust me, bro. Trust me, bro. And so here's the story. There was a Tiger armored car that was in the Harrison area, and he picked this Tiger armored car. No, sorry. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was a Tiger armored car. Now I remember. So the soldiers hop onto it, and some soldiers hop onto the hood of the Tiger armored car. And let me show you the Tiger, so that way, Tiger, armored car. Here we go. And there's the Tiger. And so the Russian soldiers hop onto this Tiger, and 4 guys sit literally side by side on the front of the hood and completely block the windshield. And so the guy on the top, like, peers through the hatch and he yells, "Donne!" You know, or whatever the Russian word for forward is, you know, whatever that is. And so Tony, who's the driver of this Tiger, he floors the Tiger armored car down this road, and he knows this, and I don't know anyone else knows this. He can't see anything because everyone's sitting on the windshield. And so he starts going 80 miles an hour, and he starts like slowly making his way off the road, and the guy on top of the Tiger said, "Tony, blast!" And then the first wheel goes off the side of the road. So Tony whips that thing hard left at 80 miles an hour, and then hard rights towards the tree, and then he whips it hard left again. And the next time he did that thing hard left, the entire Tiger armored car just flipped over, and everybody went spilling out onto the road. And the last thing you heard in the video before everyone fell off the Tiger armored car was, "Tony, blab!" And then, like, the Tiger just slides down the road and nothing else is heard. But that is the
and
whole...
then all the doofuses that were blocking the windshield became Cinnamon Toast Crunch next to the Tiger.
Nah, man, you just heard them hit the pavement and the Lego, like the Lego disassembly sound was heard. You just heard... Oh my god. Yeah, but in 19th century terms, everyone that was on the front hood of that Tiger was dashed to pieces. In modern terms, they were shredded. And so it was horrendous. It wasn't horrendous, you know, because of how gory it was. It was just a video, and you didn't really see any of these guys. You just saw them go flying off the hood, and then they disappeared off camera. But it was a...
And, you know, the stupid part was, like, Tony had to literally make every bad possible decision he could to flip this heavy-ass Tiger over, and he literally made every bad decision he could. He started off by running off the road. He couldn't see, and then he swung it hard left, hard right, did everything possible to flip the thing, and then basically, you know, wiped out the whole, like, unit.
Man, he was stupid. But the guys who got on that windshield and blocked the entire windshield were also fairly stupid. And the guy who was sitting on top of the Tiger, who started yelling at Tony, was also fairly stupid to see this whole disaster happening in front of him, and not just to tell the guy stop, you know, stop, because they were all about to get killed if he just kept on going. But that is the story.
He kept the pedal down, man. He never lit up.
Man, Tony had like a lead foot, man. Even while banking that hard left and right, his ass was on the gas, like, the whole time. He never stopped that thing. Hell, I swear, in the video, you could hear the back wheels when they lost contact with the ground. Like, the engine, like, went max rev. He was still on the freaking pedal as it was flipping over. You just heard, "Tony Blab!" for like a quick second as the tires just went wild, but then it went quiet, and then everything was silent. I think because everyone either got a concussion or they were just gone or done for. But that is the story of Tony, and I thank you so much for asking for us to recount that story, because it is a story that should never be forgotten. It is the funniest story of a video that we've ever had, except for a few others, but that was a great story, and that's the origins of the Tony joke. And so if you ever see the Tony joke in the live chat, that's the reason why. And so with that, thank you so much once again for supporting. Good night, BC Skyman, and we'll see you tomorrow. And with that,
good night.
We are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Old Warrior, who puts in a 10 and says, "Is it likely that the Russians from Belarus were brought to Moscow for something?" I'm not sure exactly what that last part means. I'm scared to read it, but brought to Moscow for something.
Can you reread that one again?
He says, "Is it likely that the Russians from Belarus were brought to Moscow for something?"
I don't know, because I'm not getting
I'll send it to, let's see, 4. There, I'll say it. There, it's in your Discord DM.
You said you'll say it, and then you said it's in the DM. Oh, that's simple. Let's see here. What do we got? No. no, man. But anyways, thank you for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to JC Atkins, who puts in a $10 donation and sadly does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, JC, for that continual support and always helping to keep us running. And we appreciate it very much. And we also have a $5 super chat once again from the Game Schizo, who says, I've been watching for a long time. First time commenting and wanted to thank you guys for what you're doing. It's incredibly important, and Slav Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying the work we do. We try our best to make the news as good as possible, and as good as it possibly could be under the circumstances. And I'm very happy to know that it's met your criteria for an incredibly long time. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you make it possible for us to be on here for 506 days straight doing this as a full-time job. And I've also got to thank everyone so much once again, and I don't really say this enough, for making it possible for me to do something that I've always wanted to do. One thing that my parents joke about, and it's something that's true, is that I talk a lot. And it is specifically on this kind of stuff. I talk nonstop on it. And so y'all allow me to be able to do this as a full-time job, to be able to talk about the things that I'm always reading about, always looking at, and always focusing on. And I got to thank y'all so much once again, because y'all make it possible for me to do this every single day, along with Matthew. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Mr. E-Man, who puts in a 5 and says, real sport is rugby union. Only the toughest even watch, let alone play rugby union.
Weenie Juniors. Hang on, what was it? What was it? The Salty Spittoon? No. What the hell was that thing, man? Where the motorcycle gang showed up in the SpongeBob movie, and they said, every bubble-blowing baby will be beaten senseless in the bar. You know, where in the world were they at when that happened?
They were at I think it was a Thug Barrel or something, whatever it was called. They were like in there with all the bikers and junk.
I think they were at the Goofy Goobers in that movie. Remember, it was, I'm a Goofy Goober, yeah. And then they went to the bathroom, and that's where the motorcycle gang was at.
Oh, yeah.
Man, dude, that motorcycle gang be rugby, Goofy Goober, American football. And that starts a war. All right, everyone kill each other. But anyways, getting past the joke there, I would say that it apparently must be a hardcore sport. I've never watched it. I'm not really one to be into sports, but I wouldn't doubt that rugby is a pretty hardcore sport, because I hear that every once in a while, and that's really all I hear about it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from CK Bold, who says, take a live chat question. And of course we will, CK Bold, and thank you very much for that support as usual. And the live chat question is going to go to... let's see here. It's going to go to Mark, Incompetent Drone Operator, who says, Ukraine seems to be slowly stretching Russia thin, and I feel there are cracks slowly appearing all over the front. And what do you think?
There certainly is cracks forming along that front, and that is something that is not just being observed by you, Mark. That's being observed by the Institute for the Study of War. That's being observed by us. That's being observed by the British Ministry of Defense. A lot of people are starting to notice that, and it's certainly something that is happening. They don't have a strategic reserve, and so naturally the front line would break down and fall away. It's kind of like having a house that is made of timbers. Like it's a timber-clad house, and over time you never replace that initial timber cladding that you put onto that house. And I'm talking about not the plastic fake timber cladding. I'm talking about the real timber cladding. That stuff eventually, as all of y'all will know, will rot away, and it will eventually just collapse. And that is what these Russian brigades are, is that original timber cladding, and it's been there for 15, 20 years now, and it's starting to rot, and nobody is trying to replace that timber cladding. Eventually, it'll just rot away and fall apart completely, and that's kind of what these Russian brigades have turned into. And so with that, I hope that was a pretty good analogy as to what these Russian brigades are like right now and what the situation for the Russian army is. And I would agree with you, Mark. It is certainly starting to show signs of fracture, and it really just matters if one brigade collapses. If only one brigade collapses, the Ukrainians get the breakthrough they need. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again, CK Bull, for sponsoring that live chat.
Indeed. And up next, we have 2 super chats. We have 2 from the entire family, Billy, Joe, Carl, Bob, Danny, and Frank, and they put in a $5 donation each time. And thank you very much for that support. Excuse me. They said, Boxer and Briefs pole flawed, opt, commando missing, and pole flawed once more. You forgot the attack helicopter and avocado option. And I can't read the rest of that because it gets political. But thank you very much for the support.
I'm scared, but I can thank you for the support, the whole family. And I would say we would include the commando option, but I don't know what commando is, to be honest with you. And so I know a lot of people are about to flame me for that, because it seemed like a lot of people said that the whole thing about commando in the live chat, but I was like, I don't know what that is. But anyways, thank you so much once again for support the whole family. Up that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a very generous $20 donation from channel legend Rob Eisman. And thank you very much, Rob, for that support.
The voice.
Whoa. Oh, damn. He says, the Tony story makes me laugh hysterically. Another one I was about to think about and laugh is the Russian pilot who ejected and his chute failed to deploy. An enforcer said he was taking his last long fall. Cold, run silent, and run deep.
And thank you so much for the support from Rob, the Submariner in our live chat. He is the Submariner. Like, if we defer to anyone for judgment on submarines and submarine warfare, it is Rob. He's our submarine guy. And I've got to thank you so much once again for the support and being here with us tonight. And also, I got to tell you, sometimes I don't really get reminded a lot because behind the scenes, everything kind of blurs together. And Matthew can attest to that. It all just kind of blurs together, but it's always amazing to hear that so many people get kicks out of some of the jokes that we have on the stream sometimes, because some of them are just great. Some of them are terrible, though. You know, like with the equally great ones comes equally terrible ones. It's kind of like SNL as far as the jokes come. Sometimes they're diamonds in the rough. Sometimes it's just garbage. But that was one of the best ones, was that video of Tony. And the other, like the one about the pilot ejecting from the plane and the parachute not ejecting, I gotta be honest with you, I can't remember that one. I remember saying something like that, but I can't remember the actual clip and what I was doing at that time. But thank you so much once again for the support, Rob, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta agree with you, Tony. The Tony story is one of the funniest stories that we've had. And so, with that, thank you so much once again for the support. We will try to run silent and run deep. And something interesting, Rob, that I know would interest you is that I was looking at a short video today, and it was a very interesting one about how the Alpha class, I believe it was, submarines in the Soviet Union were actually made entirely of titanium, which is something I did not know up until today, and I was very interested in that. And I was wondering what you know about that, because I'm sure if anyone knows anything about those Alpha class submarines, I bet it would be you. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jesus UCSB, who puts in a $20 donation, and he's also a channel legend, by the way. And thank you very much, Jesus, for that support. He says, "Hola, great job on the stream tonight. Mason and I are working on the LSA trenches, and I have heard." And he says, "Slav Ukraine, LSA tanker commander, and Los Angeles tankers."
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB. And I have been hearing from Matthew here that apparently the efforts of the Lee Spring Army in the trenches have been doing quite well. Apparently busting bunkers out there, a.k.a. Twitter accounts. And I got to thank you so much for keeping that up with Mace and everyone else, because it's good to know that people out there actually defend the Lee Spring Army from people like that. People who love to sit there and harass people and then claim victim when they ever shoot back. And I gotta tell y'all something. I mean, because a lot of y'all are going to be in the dark about what we're talking about right here, but it doesn't really matter. It's a thing in between us and some other person. We're not a crybaby like they are going, let me go tell everyone. But you know, this guy sent an email to Matthew after he talked crap about us on another YouTube video. So Matthew left a comment saying some stuff like, you know, big talk. So this guy started sending emails to us, and now he wants to go onto his stream and read off these emails like he's a victim of himself. People like that are pitiful. They really are, because they sit there and they instigate their own problems and then act like they're a victim of their own creation, which is just stupid. You know, and I've got to thank you so much, Jesus UCSB, for carrying on the torch out there and keeping this whole thing up, because it is great to know that people do actually stand up for us and defend us from lunatics like that. Although we don't ask for anyone to do it. We actually would rather be happy that it only stayed in between us and them. But, of course, they want to make everyone in the world know, so if anyone wants to go for them, hey, I'm not going to say whether I condemn it or support it. I just say I understand. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is a $17.76 donation from S. Clearian. And thank you very much for that support. And also, I like what you did there with the $17.76.
That's good.
That's clever. They said that there's a line from the Good Shepherd that says, "Soviet power is a myth. It's nothing but painted rust." And would you agree, or do you think there are shortfalls related to command and competency?
I would say it's really a shortfall of everything. If you look at Soviet culture, there was a shortfall of everything. A shortfall of commander's competence, a shortfall of engineering competence, shortfall of the builder's competence. There was a shortfall in every single kind of competence in the Soviet Union that led to everything just being completely subpar. Kind of like those Alpha-class submarines that I was just asking Rob Eisman about. Rob said that they were pretty impressive on paper, but they weren't that big of a deal. And why they were impressive on paper is because titanium is far lighter than steel, and you can use less of it and get the same structural the same structural demands out of it that you would with steel. And so because the Russians were using that for these Alpha-class submarines, these things were able to get up to incredible speeds underwater, like 42 knots, which is equivalent to about 45 miles per hour completely underwater. That is lightning fast, especially for a submarine. And what was scary about that is it's like, oh my god, these things can go anywhere, and no surface ship could chase them down, no submarine could chase them down. But the problem with them is that they had a limited weapons armament due to technological deficiencies that nobody in the Soviet Union was really addressing, so they ended up being not that good. But on paper, like everything else the Soviets did, it was incredible, and the Soviet propaganda machine would have you believe they are, because they way overplay the abilities of anything they were able to do. And so to answer that, I would say it is a shortfall related to not just command and competency, but everything that led to those units, or a vehicle, or a ship, or a submarine, or a plane being put under the command of that commander. There was incompetency on every single step of the way from every single person involved. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Escalation, and really cool support, and thank you so much for that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Neil Vizanant, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Neil, for that support. He says, how many Darwin Awards do you think the Russians will get in the end of the war?
That is a great question. Let's go to the current casualty count and see how many of them they've gotten so far. 236,590. I would say at least 300,000 Darwin Awards will be issued before the end of this war. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, that was our last super chat for now. Whoa. So we're moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, of course, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Mark Hodges, Sife, Cliff Simonson, Earl Bernew, and Paul Schultz. They said tonight's Morse code cipher is Zaluzhny said they are bombing Russia, and now Russia acts like it's unheard of.
And that is the correct answer. Y'all just hit the jackpot, and y'all win. Thank you for doing that Morse code message. And I would say that is the correct one. Y'all have been doing that for an incredibly long time, and that message is also a pretty true one. And they cry foul as soon as they get attacked, after they've been attacking the Ukrainians like that for a year and a half. And it's absolutely ridiculous. And so with that, thank y'all for deciphering that Morse code message for the 506th day of the war, and thank y'all for always doing that. It's always impressive, probably to loads of people in the live chat, and also to me, that somehow y'all are able to read that like it's English, like just normal print English, and that's really impressive. It is English, but it's in Morse code, so I had to correct that before someone says that. But with that, thank y'all for deciphering that once again. That is incredibly cool. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is a live chat question from Michael Mervosh, who says, does anyone know if Ukraine took Klishkivka?
They have. We do know that they took Klishkivka around 2 days ago, from what we can tell. Live UA showed that they had taken Klishkivka, and there had been reports that the Ukrainians had taken the town. And so from what we understand, they were able to. And so with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to PR Beck, who says, Enforcer, did you hear about the explosion at the Novorossiysk nuclear plant?
No. The Novorossiysk nuclear plant? How do you spell that?
Let's see. It is spelled Novoralsk.
Nuclear plant blast. This is a thing. 14 hours ago.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this. It was an explosion at the uranium plant. I tweeted about this earlier today, but I wasn't really sure where it was.
More than 100 people have been hospitalized, and one person was killed after an explosion at a uranium enrichment plant in Russia's Ural region, the largest of its kind in the world, according to local media reports. Oh, buddy, look, it's the Russians incompetently operating nuclear power. Who would have ever thought? That is crazy.
Let me guess. Right after it happened, they were saying, "Oh, it's okay. There's no risk to the public. It's okay."
Dude, someone was coming out with their face melting off from the radiation, and they were going, "Ah, it's fine. He's probably just a little warm. Give him some water."
He's delusional. Get him to the infirmary.
Yeah, he's delusional. Get him to the infirmary. I saw graphite on the roof. You didn't see nothing. But yeah, that is actually crazy. I hadn't heard about that. That completely blew under the radar today. But do y'all know the story about the guy who was in Japan that was working for TEPCO, and he was at a uranium enrichment plant, and they ended up mixing the solution wrong? And of course, they didn't have proper safety equipment or anything like that. TEPCO was just completely dropping the ball there and being completely incompetent, I believe, or the third party they had doing that was. And the guy got the highest dose of radiation that has ever been recorded by a human receiving it. And through the next few weeks, I believe, in the hospital, doctors desperately tried to find ways to save him, even doing experimental procedures that were only theory at that point, and none of it was to avail. And during that entire time, his the meat of his legs and body was like slopping off of his bones, and people could only be in the room around him for so long before they also started to get high doses of radiation from him. It was a terrible story. It was a horrific story, but largely surrounding incompetence. And also the guy wasn't really trained properly either on top of that, so he didn't really know how to properly mix the mixture, and then that's what led to the pretty much the mixture turning on, pretty much, well, the best way to explain it, for a second, and then giving everyone in the room extremely high and lethal doses of radiation poisoning. And that guy got it the worst. And somehow he still survived for 3 weeks. I've got to be honest with y'all, that is one of the worst ways to go, it sounds, especially if the government, like in Japanese hospitals aren't actually allowed to let you die. You know, if you're beyond the point of saving, so they have to do everything in their power to try and save your life. And that's why that guy survived for 3 weeks, although he shouldn't have, is because the Japanese hospital he was in, by law, couldn't just let him die. They had to try everything in their power to make this guy survive. And it was horrendous, at least from what people say. I think you can pull that story. I don't know the exact name of the guy, but it is a tragedy that has been recounted across the internet. But there's a huge lie. There's one huge lie about the story that a lot of people love to say, is that the Japanese government used him for cruel medical experiments. That wasn't the case. They were trying a lot of these medical experiments to save his life, like grafting normal skin from a normal person onto him in hopes that it would start to replicate the cells in his body and would be able to overpower the radiation in him. It turns out he had been so irradiated that the radiation that was bouncing around inside of him was so strong that it would end up actually irradiating and killing the new grafted skin that they put onto him. So there was really no way to save the guy. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, Zero, who put in a 2 Canadian, and thank you for that support, by the way, said the person's name, which was Ouchie. That was his name.
I think it's Uchi. But let me check.
Yeah, I figured it was probably something different, but, you know, I butchered it anyway.
Yeah, it's Hisashi Uchi, I believe. And it's the Tokai Mura nuclear accident. And let's see here. Nuclear waste accident, victim report. There's something here about it. And dang it, that's not the right one. Hang on. Oh, this one, yeah, it's this story. If you want to find out about it, just type in Hisashi Ushi, I believe it is, or Ushi. Just type that in, and there are loads of people who made documentaries about it. It was absolutely terrible. But with that, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Beaver Zero, and also thank you for supporting this channel and helping us keep this thing rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have one more super chat. This one is from Rob Eisman once again, and this time he puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much for your support as well. He says, Alpha class had the U.S. shitting bricks until they were actually in the water. Very loud, and the reactor used a lead bismuth mix, and it was junk. They had difficulty maintaining K-effective, and Google it.
And thank you so much for the support, Rob. And the Alpha class is really weird looking. Tell me this thing doesn't look like a massive narco sub.
Yeah, that's that thing didn't we look at this one the other night?
That's that thing I don't like, bang bang. But anyway, no, we didn't look at this one last night. I think we looked at the Oscar class submarines. Let me pull that up. Oscar class. And they look similar, but they're different. I think this one's larger actually. And let me get a good
Oscar.
Oscar. There we go. There's an Oscar class, and there's an Alpha class. Let me get a better picture. There's the Alpha class right there. I gotta be honest, it looks like a giant, goofy narco sub. I mean, like, it looks like a narco sub, doesn't it?
Yeah, somewhat.
But what's
I don't know, man. Those narco subs are like made with duct tape. This is kind of like a level up.
Oh, let me go find a good-looking narco sub off screen. Narco sub. Because I swear I've seen one that looks a lot like that. Let's see. And also, by the way, it's a misnomer that they're subs. A lot of them are just low profile to the water. Very few of them are actually submersible. But let me go try and find one that looks like that, because there is one that looks like it, and I've seen it before in pictures. In pictures, I tell you. And so let me go around and look, and I'm having a hard time finding them. A lot of them are just a low visibility kind that aren't actually submersible. Where the hell's my narco sub? I need to find my narco sub. Here we go. No, that doesn't actually look like it. Let me go find a better picture. 1 second, everyone. I'm a little picky on this. It's got to be a good-looking one. Narco sub, narco. Here we go. Here we go. This one's in the Steam Workshop, but narco sub.
Man, yeah. It's not even real.
Man, that thing ain't real, but let me see. Here we go. Here's the real one that's based off of right here. Big old narco sub.
Jeez.
Man, and what's interesting is that a lot of these, in fact, none of them have ever been captured at sea. It's always the ones that look like this. Let me go find the picture of when they were, I believe, seizing it. Yeah, right here. It's these.
Yeah, that's a narco sub I've seen. That one right there.
Yeah, these right here are actually called low, they're like LVPs or something like that. Low visibility, something. Low visibility profile, that's what they're called. And they're not really submersible. In fact, they're not a submarine at all. It's just a really low to the waterline boat, pretty much.
Have you watched the videos of them trying to seize these boats, the Coast Guard?
Oh yeah, you know, they're like pulling up on the sub and they're like screaming for them to surrender, and they're not. So then they have to climb onto the sub while it's underway and bust open the hatches. I mean, it's some crazy stuff. And believe it or not,
here's my question: when the Coast Guard come jumping off their boat to go like start banging on the door of the sub to make them open it, how come there's always somebody gurgling water in the background? Have you ever noticed that? They'll be like,
yeah, you know, that's a good point. Someone's always down there getting waterboarded somehow. But another interesting thing about this, Matthew, is that one of these, you would not believe this. I'm about to blow your mind here, so be ready for this. One of these was found off the coast of Spain, and the crew had actually taken that thing all the way from the coast of Colombia almost to Spain. They had crossed the Atlantic in that stupid thing to bring cocaine.
Man, you
to
know
Spain.
they were getting paid.
They were getting bank. But that honestly, these things are insane, and the stuff that the narcs do to try and get the drugs to other places, it is insane. Like, you won't believe the efforts they go through. But then again, people pay out the kazoo. I'm sure there's someone in Minnesota that knows a lot about that. They pay out the kazoo for cocaine, and so of course they're going to make sure to keep on shipping this stuff around to wherever the hell they need to. But absolutely insane stuff. But this is an Oscar class submarine, and that's the Alpha. Getting back to the subs, and it is pretty interesting to hear that they were crap like really everything else. Not surprising, really, but still very interesting to hear. Once again, a continuation of Soviet incompetence from top to bottom. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, Rob, for sharing that with us.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have another super chat. This one is from the Game Schizo yet again. And thank you for the third support of the night. And this time they put in a $20 donation. And thank you once again. They said the best video on YouTube about Hisashi was made by a YouTuber called Wendigoon. And he goes into detail about how many times the treatments showed hope. And the guy was very brave and wanted to stay alive for his family.
And I thank you so much for the support, the Game Schizo. And I have to absolutely agree with you there. I forgot the name of the channel. I'm never good with names. One thing everyone will learn in time is that I'm never good with remembering names. It actually takes a lot of memorization for me to get down people's names in the live chat, and I get them down after just seeing them night after night. But the Wendigoon is the channel I watched the documentary at, and it was an amazing one. I would highly recommend, if y'all want to know the story of Hisashi Oshi, that y'all go check out his video on it, because it was a really good one, and it actually told the true story, not the ones that people want to put out for the heckin' chonker upvotes, you know, where they talk about the Japanese government doing sick experiments to the guy. He actually just tells the story from start to finish, the exact way it happened, and what the guy was actually saying, and everything in between. And so with that, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Games Gizzo, and also sharing that with us, because Wendigoon is a OG channel in that regard, and a great one as far as it comes to documentaries like that. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Robert, who says, any thoughts on the U.S. activating people from individual ready reserve? U.S. expecting action in 2 theaters at once, question mark.
Possibly. It sounds though that the ready reserves that were mobilized the other day, or activated, they're just going to Europe. I believe it was a part of a routine event, I believe. If I'm correct?
I think it was a part, I would speculate, because we really didn't get much detail on it. I think it was something that was agreed to at the NATO Vilnius summit, and I think it was simply putting that into action.
I think so. I don't think that it's showing that we're ready for, well, we're getting ready for a war that's happening here soon. And on top of that, only 3,000 guys wasn't that big of a number. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next live chat goes to Plexus Gaming, who says, it is estimated that Russia only had 4,000 supply trucks. And where have all these supply trucks come from all of a sudden?
These supply trucks may possibly be produced in Russia during the war. The number of 4,000 actually came from us, because I went and looked through the logistical units and found out how many trucks they had, and the purpose-made logistics units only had 4,000 supply trucks. But it seems that they're of course losing far more than that. They've lost 7,020 of them as of today. And that may be civilian vehicles that are being used. They may be building more of these trucks. Unlike things like tanks and other similar kinds of equipment that are actually incredibly advanced and require a lot of components from the West, a Ural 4320 is fairly simple, or really any similar supply truck like that. They are fairly they're very simple. Why in the world am I butchering the word so much? I think the coffee's wearing off. Anyways, all it is a diesel engine in a cab on a incredibly large chassis, and that's it. So it's a fairly simple vehicle to produce. It doesn't really take that much. So they may have continued to try and produce these through the war, and it's probably one of the few things they actually can make outside of things such as tanks, which they have no clue or no chance in hell of really producing at this point. And so that may be why the numbers have far exceeded 4,000, is because they continue to produce trucks, and so they're replacing them, and they're also using a large amount of civilian vehicles like Ladas that also get included into that loss count. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next question goes to Barry Woodward, who says, can the mine-sweeping drone detect on ordinated cluster munitions?
I don't know if it would be able to. Unfortunately, I'm not a tech on that thing, so I don't really know the exact details of what it can do. I would assume it's possible. As long as it's metallic or magnetic, I'm sure it'll be able to find it. So I would say possibly yes, but I don't know for certain. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Fiddle Player, who says, whatever happened at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant after all of that speculation when the Ukrainian engineers were told to stop coming to work, and then it suddenly totally dropped out of the news?
Man, why do we always get this question every single night, man? Like, I hate to answer it really, but here's the honest answer. We try and deliver the news the way it is, and I'll give you the honest answer as to how I took it. The Ukrainian intelligence hyped something up. This channel reported it the way the Ukrainian intelligence was putting it out, and then in the course of literally just a few hours, they went and reversed it all, and they just said, oh, it's dissipating, it's not that big of a deal anymore, and then Ukrainian intelligence just dropped it completely. So that's what happened. It apparently just became a non-issue, and the Ukrainians just went and swept it under the rug. So that would be my answer. That's what happened. At least from what we understand, Ukrainian intelligence just dropped it, and it wasn't even an issue anymore. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And our next one actually comes from Angry Penguin, who asked a good question, an amazing question. He asked G3, and let me show you all a G3 rifle. And here is the Heckler & Koch G3. Is that correct, Matthew? Am I saying that right?
Heckler & Koch.
It is a Heckler & Koch. Okay, good. But here is let me get a good picture of this. A Heckler & Koch G3. This is one of the early variants with the wood stock and furnishings on it. Let me try and find you all a modern one. Here we go. This is the one in OD Green, which was a fairly common rifle that you would see in the West German Army. And that's a band quality. Man.
You know something? I just want to say this fun fact real quick. You know the name Heckler and Koch, right?
Yes.
So what happened was there was a heckler, all right? He was heckling somebody. And then suddenly this guy decided he liked Coke. I'm not talking about, bad Coke. I'm talking about the Coke, like, Coca-Cola. So it became Heckler and Coke because he liked to heckle and he liked Coke.
Man.
Man, I'm telling you.
Wait, hang on. I think we actually know someone like that, man. But he actually likes the non-drink Coke. But anyways,
that's right. And also, he doesn't own a successful gun company.
No, no. But anyways, moving on from that, Angry Penguin asked us, G3. Here's a G3, a G3 right here. That's a G3 battle rifle, and this is the FAL battle rifle. Which would y'all like better? Matthew, run a late stream poll on this. FAL or G3? Those are the only options. You can't chicken out.
Oh, the FAL wins.
Oh, we gotta see though. We gotta see.
We'll see.
We gotta see that. I want that.
Which one?
I want that poll that's not on the menu.
Like better. Yeah, what were the options? FAL and what?
FAL and a G3.
There.
And so let's see what we get. All right, so to give you all my honest opinion on the subject, well, actually, I'm going to wait for that poll to round out, but to give you a little bit of information for a moment while we gather some information on that poll, the FAL was a rifle designed by the FN company in Belgium, and the name stands for Fusil Automatique Léger, which means something along the lines of an automatic rifle. It's an automatic battle rifle. That's pretty much its name. And this thing served around the entire world. Many people famously know this as being used by the Rhodesian security forces in the Bush War in the 70s. And this is probably where this gun got its name to fame, but it's been used everywhere else. It's been used by the Lebanese and the Lebanese army. It has also been used by militant groups in Lebanon. It's been also used by Syria as well. It's been used by almost every single Latin American country in existence. It has also been used. The United States actually brought this thing over in trials in the very early 50s, and it was going neck and neck with the M14, and this thing actually qualified better than the M14 in every single category, and for some reason the US still went with the M14 for some reason, but that's a whole other story for a whole other time. The H&K G3 is chambered in 7.62 as well, 7.62 by 51, just like the FAL. But this actually came out of German designers who, funnily enough, had been a part of the design of the STG-44, which is pretty cool because this is considered the first battle rifle of its kind in the world, or what people would call the modern precursor to the assault rifle, if you want to call it that. It shot a Kurz round, which is a fairly short round for the time. Really cool, but the guys who designed this ended up designing the G3, and you can see the similarities, especially at the back of the stock. They would go to Spain. Spain didn't really like the rifle much, and then they went back to Germany, and they pretty much went back to where they started working on rifles in the Second World War, and they made this for the Germans, and then the Spanish bought one later. So that's the whole story in between the FAL and the G3, giving you a little bit of information. And so the results are...
On the poll?
Yeah, on the poll?
62% wanted the FAL and 38% wanted the G3.
Man, that's actually closer than I thought it'd be. I thought the FAL would just roll over the G3, but a lot of y'all apparently like that gun. And also, yes, both of them are heavy as hell. And so with that, we are on to the next very interesting poll results.
All right, and with that being said, we have 3 live chat questions left. So our next one goes to Mr. K, who says, do you think Ukraine attacking into recognized Russian territory will unite the Russian people and boost support for the war?
Reread that one again. I'm sorry.
Do you think that Ukraine attacking into recognized Russian territory will unite the Russian people and boost support for the war?
At this point, I don't think so, because so many people are critical of the Russian government at this point. I think that would just fuel the flames of these critical people and make it seem as though the war should end for sure. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, before we move on to the second and last one of the night, for you were largely correct, but Mikhail Kalashnikov swears he had never seen an STG-44 while designing the AK. But look at an AK. Wait, Matthew, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to rabbit hole on this one here. Look at an AK-47 right here. And then look at an STG-44 and tell me that they don't look very similar. Or at least the AK doesn't look like it was somewhat inspired off of the concepts in the STG. It looks like it. I would think that it would be. What do you think, Matthew?
I mean, it looks pretty close.
Yeah, you know, it's like, I mean, honestly, to me, it looks like a more simplified version of an STG. And Fuyuma said he's a liar. And honestly, the Russians have a good reason to lie about that. You know, because they never credited the Nazis with anything, even if they steal something like the STG and create an AK out of it. So yeah, I think I honestly kind of in the camp, but I'm not really sure. I'm kind of on the fence on that, whether he lied or not. He is a Russian, so, you know, they usually lie about that stuff for propaganda reasons, and that may be it. But yeah, they're very similar guns, very, very similar looking. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well for Yuma, and we are on to the second to last one of the night.
And this one goes to Ant OQC, who says, shouldn't we support Prigozhin and Wagner to fight the Kremlin so that they weaken Russian forces and perhaps stop the war in Ukraine?
I think we should. Whatever weakens the Russians to help the Ukrainians win the war, we should be behind. So if it's if the enemy of our enemy is our friend, then we should support that enemy, just so that way we can make sure to weaken the other enemy. And in the process, both of them will be knocked out. And so I would say, yes, we should do that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Joffrey Day, who says, here's my question. Where are the Challenger 2s? And we've seen numerous reports of Leopards on the front line, but yet to see some Challengers in action.
That's a good question. We actually have seen picture proof of the Challengers being near the front line, but we've never seen one in operation. Honestly, there's no way to explain that. We haven't actually gotten a valid reason or an explanation as to why that is the case, but one day we will. I don't know when that will be, but it will be some point in the future. Maybe it's because the Challengers are a little bit more rare than the Leopards are, and so they're not really wanting to sacrifice them as much as the Leopards may possibly be sacrificed in a worst-case scenario. That may be the case, but I don't really know why. So, unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that one at the moment. But with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. There are 3,400 of y'all that are still on right now. And I'm very honored to know that so many of y'all have stuck with us until the end. If y'all did enjoy and y'all are new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. And whether you're new or whether you've been around forever, make sure to like and comment on this stream, because that helps this channel to grow and helps it to reach more people. And so with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Least Spring Army.
And good night, LSA. See you all tomorrow, and of course, peep the Twitter. Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Least Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.